That's the one thing good about it. There ain't nobody showing up, and you know it ain't no big deal.
Yeah, let's make sure I got my dinger off.
I gotta leave to Tallahassee in the morning. I'll be there till Monday. Lobbying those legislators. Lights on.
Oh, I gotta turn that off.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to hereby call to order the Escambia County Planning Board rezoning meeting for February 1st. We do have a full board, so we do have a quorum. At this time, I'd like to ask everyone, please turn off any cell phones or noisemakers that you have, or put them on silent. And at this time, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. Glad to see a good turnout. Democracy working at its best, right? There's a lot of things that we're going to be talking about today that are complex issues, and we understand that some of you may not understand all of how it works. I'm going to do my best, and with the help of Horace, we're going to do our best to explain to you how the process works, because there are certain things that this board can and cannot consider, and that's very important, because if you get up and you talk about something that we can't consider, it's not going to be considered in our vote. We have a very specific set of rules that we have to follow at this level. Now, you may be wanting to talk about stormwater. It's not that it's not important, it's just not handled at this board. It's handled through development review process, other things, okay? So I don't want you to get the feeling that we're dismissing your comments or anything, but we can only vote on the 5 criteria that are presented. That's it. If we go outside of that, we're putting the board at subject to being overturned by the circuit court. So we have to stick to those criteria. So when you get up to speak, we're going to ask the staff to bring up those criteria so you can see exactly what they are. And I would ask you, just for brevity of time and for everyone in here, keep your comments to one of these 5 criteria. That's the only thing we can consider, okay? And I want to make sure that we do that. All right, at this point, we're going to go directly into our meeting. Staff members, do we have proof of publication of the hearings?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and does that publication meet all of the legal requirements?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Chair will entertain a motion to waive the reading of the legal advertisement.
So moved.
Motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Second, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. Board members, you've been previously provided the meeting minutes from the previous meeting. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections to those meeting minutes? Hearing none, Chair will entertain a motion to accept.
Move to approve.
We have a second.
Second.
Second, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, the rezoning hearing package for February 1st with the findings of fact was previously provided to all board members. The chair will now entertain a motion to accept the rezoning hearing package with the findings of facts and the legal advertisement into evidence.
So moved.
Motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Second, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. The rezoning hearing package with the findings of facts and the legal advertisement will be marked and included for the record for all of today's cases. We only have one rezoning case. At this time, I'll ask our court reporter to please swear in the members of the staff that will be testifying.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony about to give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and so you do affirm?
Okay, we get everybody, all right. Board members, you've previously qualified these staff members to be experts in the area of land use and planning. Do any of you have any questions regarding their qualifications or their ability to offer that expert testimony? All right, hearing none, let the record reflect that the staff members will be considered experts in the area of land use and planning. Okay, now at this point, I'm going to read a very long statement that's required as part of our quasi-judicial process. There's a lot of legalese in here, and it may not mean much to you. We'll try to explain it in simple terms when we get to the end, but we're required by law to read this into the record, okay? At this hearing, the Planning Board is acting under its authority to hear and make recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners, BCC, on rezoning applications. These hearings are quasi-judicial in nature. Quasi-judicial hearings are like evidentiary hearings in a court of law, however, they are less formal. All testimony will be given under oath, and anyone testifying before the Planning Board may be subject to cross-examination. All documents and exhibits that the Planning Board considers must be entered into evidence and made part of the record. Opinion testimony will be limited to experts, and closing arguments will be limited to the evidence in the record. Before making a decision, the Planning Board will consider the relevant testimony, the exhibits entered into evidence, and the applicable laws. Each individual who wishes to address the Planning Board must complete a speaker request form and turn it in to the staff members. You will not be allowed to speak unless we have a completed form. Please also note on the rezoning, only those individuals who are present and give testimony under oath on the record will be allowed to speak at the subsequent BCC meeting. No new evidence can be entered at the BCC meeting. Therefore, all testimony and evidence must be presented today. The Planning Board will provide a recommendation for each rezoning request to the BCC. They will then review the testimony, documents, exhibits, consider the closing arguments, and make a final decision. All decisions by the BCC are final. Anyone who wishes to seek judicial review of that decision by the BCC must do so in a court of competent jurisdiction within 30 days that the BCC either approves or rejects the recommended order of the Planning Board. All written or oral communications outside of this hearing with any members of the Planning Board is considered ex parte communication. Ex parte communications are presumed prejudicial under Florida law and must be disclosed as provided in BCC number 96-13. As each case is heard, the chair will ask any board member who has been involved in any ex parte communication, please identify themselves and describe that communication. Now, this is the important part, and this is where I would like for you to please follow along and keep in mind these are the criteria that we must consider. Okay, so this is what you're going to be speaking on when you come up and speak in the quasi-judicial hearing. Okay, as required by section 2-7.2 of the Escambia County Land Development Code, the Planning Board's recommendation to the BCC shall include consideration Horace, you now owe us all donuts at the next meeting. All right, back to this. As required by section 2-7.2 of the Escambia County Land Development Code, the Planning Board's recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners shall include consideration of the following approval conditions. Approval conditions. The applicant has the burden of presenting competent, substantial evidence to the reviewing board establishing that the requested zoning district would contribute to or result in logical and orderly development pattern. The appropriate surrounding area with which uses and conditions must be considered may vary for those uses and conditions and is not necessarily the same area required for the mailed notifications. A logical and orderly pattern shall demonstrate each of the following conditions. A, consistent with the comprehensive plan. The proposed zoning is consistent with the future land use category as prescribed in LDC Chapter 3 and with all other applicable goals, objectives, and policies of that comprehensive plan. If the rezoning is required to properly enact a proposed FLU amendment, it must be transmitted to the state agency for review. The proposed zoning is consistent with the proposed FLU and conditional to its adoption. We're going to explain what that means in just a second, but that's important to this case. Consistent with the zoning district provisions. The proposed zoning is consistent with the purpose and intent and with any other zoning established provisions prescribed by the proposed district in the chapter. Compatibility with surroundings. All of the permitted uses of the proposed zoning, not just those anticipated by the rezoning applications, are compatible as defined in Chapter 6 with the surrounding uses. The uses of any surrounding undeveloped property shall be considered the permitted uses of the applicable district. Compatibility is not considered with potential conditional uses or with any non-conforming or unapproved uses. Also, in establishing the compatibility of a residential use, there is no additional burden to demonstrate the compatibility of specific residents or activities that are currently protected under fair housing laws. Appropriate if spot zoning. Where the proposed zoning would establish or reinforce a condition of spot zoning as defined in Chapter 6, the isolated district would nevertheless be transitional in character between the adjoining districts, or the differences within those districts would be minor or sufficiently limited. The extent of these mitigating characteristics or conditions demonstrates an appropriate site-specific balance of interest between the isolated district and the adjoining lands. And finally, appropriate with changed or changing conditions. If the land uses or development conditions within the area surrounding the property of the rezoning have changed, the changes are such a degree and character that it is in the public's interest to allow new uses, densities of the proposed area through rezoning, and the permitted uses of the proposed district are appropriate and not premature for the area or likely to contribute to urban sprawl. At the beginning of each case, as long as there are no objections from the applicant, the staff will present location and zoning maps as well as photographs of the property. Then we will hear from the applicant and any witnesses that they may wish to call. Then we will hear from the staff and any witnesses that they will wish to call. Then we will hear from each and every one of you who have requested to speak via speaker request form. Okay? We do have one case today, and it's public hearing case Z-2022-03. Attorney Meredith Bush will be the agent for Thomas Henry, the owner. 7400 Block Gibson Road, 7500 Block Gibson Road, and the parcels are notated on the agenda. This is a request from agricultural, 1 dwelling unit per 20 acres, to rural residential, 1 dwelling unit per 4 acres. Okay, now, at this point, this is where I'm going to explain a little bit of what we're going to do. This rezoning request also has a subsequent future land use request. Okay, in this case, it's called a large-scale amendment. Because a rezoning would be subject to that FLU, we're going to now put the rezoning hearing on hold, and we're going to go over and address the future land use issue first. You have to have the chicken before the egg, vice versa, right? So we're going to address that. So that's why we're we're putting this meeting on hold, and we're going into our regular planning board meeting. We do have 2 small agenda items that we're going to get out of the way very quickly. It's the same attorney presenting those, and there's no objections with the state. We don't have anyone signed up to speak on those, so we're going to go through those, okay? It's very important that you know that even if the board recommends approval of the rezoning, it's still subject to the large-scale amendment, still has to go through more reviews, which includes going over to the Department of Economic Opportunity in Tallahassee and other items. Matt, did you wish to add anything? Matt is our board attorney. Anything to make that clear for the public?
No, Mr. Chairman, not at this time. Just if the board were to recommend approval to the BCC regarding the rezoning, that you include in that approval that it is contingent upon the state approving the flu change.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, so we're going to put planning board rezoning hearing on temporary hold. I'm going to hereby open the Escambia Planning Board regular meeting. I call to order. We do have a quorum. Did we have proof of publication of this hearing?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Chair will entertain a motion to waive the reading of the legal.
So moved.
Second.
Second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Are there any changes to the previous planning board meeting minutes, corrections or additions?
Move to approve.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we will come back to the monthly update and the planning board outlook. The first case we're going to consider is a public hearing concerning a review of ordinance amending the future land use map SSA 2022-01 that the board review and recommend to the Board of County Commissioners for adoption an ordinance amending the future land use map for small scale amendment SSA 2022. Meredith, if you would like to give an opening statement, please.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board. My name is Meredith Bush. I am an attorney and certified planner at Clark Partington. I'm here on behalf of the applicant. We agree with staff's
Ms.
finding.
Bush, I'm sorry, could you move the microphone a little closer? Just, it's not picking up quite. There you go.
Okay,
Thank
is this
you.
better?
Yes, thank you.
All right, I'll start over. So Meredith Bush, attorney and AICP certified planner at Clark Partington, here on behalf of the applicant. On the small scale SSA 2022-01, we agree with findings of staff. If there are no speakers, then we're happy to waive formal presentation and ask for the expedited hearing.
Okay. Staff, do you have any issues with that?
Staff has no objection, so that's,
Meets all of the criteria?
it meets all the criteria for the small scale of commercial to mixed use urban.
Okay. Before we do an expedited presentation, we're going to ask, is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak on this matter? Remember, this is probably not the case that all of you are here for. This is number 2 on the regular planning board meeting under public hearings, number 2, SSA 2022-01. I don't have any sign-up sheets for it, but give the opportunity. All right, hearing none, Chair will entertain a motion under the expedited standards.
So moved.
Motion, do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. Ms. I keep calling her Miss Crawford. That was before she got married. I'm sorry, Miss Bush.
Actually divorced, but
Okay.
congratulations are due just
Well,
the same.
congratulations anyway then, right?
Thank you. But it's Bush now.
All right, very good. Sorry about that. Ms. Bush, please go ahead with number 2 then.
So SSA 2022-02, this is on Pensacola Boulevard. Similar to the last case, we agree with staff's findings. They support the application. We're requesting a change from commercial to mixed-use urban and would ask for the expedited review.
Thank you, Chair. Staff does concur, it does meet all the standard reviews there from commercial to mixed use urban on 6905 Pensacola Boulevard.
Okay, thank you. Anyone from the general public here to speak on small scale amendment 2022-02? You do have one. Okay.
My name is Mika Johnson, 828 Tina Avenue, Pensacola, Florida, 32505. I'm wondering, what are they gonna do with that piece of land there? What's the plans for it?
Okay. Ms. Crawford, do you wish to respond on this one?
Sure, I'm happy to jump in. So I believe at this point, the intent is the construction of a storage facility, a self-storage commercial use. It's there behind the, or beside the Napa Auto Parts store.
Okay, now, it's important to understand that in this board's purview, we don't look at the actual development. That's done through the Development Review Committee. We look at the standards for a small-scale amendment, and it has met the criteria for those. So, did you have anything that was concern of the criteria for the small-scale amendment?
No, I just wanted to, some of the elderly relatives and us, we wanted to know what they were gonna do, and so they asked me to come, so I'll tell them what you said, and we'll research it and see what we need to do next.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, anyone else that wishes to speak on 2022-02? All right, hearing none, we will hereby close public comment portion. Chair will entertain a motion under expedited rules.
Move to approve.
Okay,
Second?
motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? All right, motion carries. Now the case that most of you are probably here for. This is a public hearing concerning the review of ordinance amending Chapter 7, the policy for the future land use 1.1.1 to provide an amendment for the 2030 future land use map named LSA 2022-02, that the board review and recommend to the Board of County Commissioners for transmittal to the Department of Economic Opportunity. That's that extra step that we talked about. An ordinance amending the Comprehensive Plan, Chapter 7, 2030, flu map for the specific parcels, and I'm not going to read each one of them in. There's multiple parcels that you can see on the agenda, requesting to change existing flu designation from agricultural to agricultural residential, an area of 376.61 plus minus acres. Ms. Bush?
Mr. Chair, would staff like to go ahead and present the photographs and maps?
Yes, I'm sorry, we can do that. John, if you'll give your name and position for the record, please.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chair and board members. My name's John Fisher. I'm a senior planner with Escambia County Development Services. Today we are looking at large-scale 2022-02 at Gibson Road and Crabtree Church Road. Here we have the location map of the 5 parcels that are subject to the large scale. This is showing the existing future land use that is currently out there, with the red lines around it being a 500-foot buffer, or not 500-foot just zone around them. Then the black large line is the mailing list line of 2,500 feet. Everyone inside that line should have received a mailer. This is what the proposed future land use map amendment the applicant is asking for, is to have them rezoned to AR, agricultural residential. This is the current zoning, agricultural. This is showing wetlands on the property. This is showing flood zones on the property. They do have some A flood zones and X flood zones. At any time in development, those would be looked into further, or any flood studies would be required through FEMA. This is the aerial map showing the aerial. This is just a breakdown of just zoomed in aerials for some of the areas where we can get a better look for anyone that's looking. Same thing here for 2 of the parcels. And the last parcel here. And this is also a map showing the prime farmland soils that are indicated from Escambia County's GIS. This is 2 public hearing signs, one for the rezoning case and one for the large scale. This is west along Crabtree Church Road. Here, this again is looking west along Crabtree Church Road, zoomed out. This is looking north across Crabtree Church Road to the driveway to the parcel. This is looking east along Crabtree Church Road. This is looking southeast across Crabtree Road. This is the 2 public hearing signs looking south on, I believe, Gibson. This is looking south at Crabtree Church Road, the stop sign. This is looking west along Crabtree Church Road. This is looking north at Gibson Road. This is looking east, intersection of Crabtree Church Road and Gibson Road. This is looking east along Crabtree Church Road. This is looking east along Crabtree Church Road. Looking south across Crabtree Church Road. And west along Crabtree Church Road and intersection of Gibson Road. Looking west along Gibson Road. This is looking east along Gibson Road. It's looking south across Gibson Road from the northern parcel. And this is looking east along Gibson Road on the southern parcel on Gibson Road. This is looking south from Gibson Road and looking west along Gibson Road. And this is looking north on from the southern parcel on Gibson Road. And those are all the photographies. We did have a lot of signs posted out there due to the 5 parcels. So there's a lot of different pictures and angles.
Thank you, John. Meredith, you want to go into your presentation, and then we'll allow the staff to go through the specific criteria.
Great, thank you, sir, absolutely. Again, my name is Meredith Bush. I'm a board-certified local government attorney and certified planner at Clark Partington here on behalf of Mr. Thomas Henry, the applicant in this case. I'll save you the pain of having me read for you our application submitted. I'm sure you've all had a chance to review it, but I will walk through those criteria and the high points. I would direct your attention to page 7 of the application, which is a concurrency determination acknowledgement. And I think it's important from the outset to point out that at the time of application, the applicant acknowledges that the necessary facilities and services are in place at the time a development permit is issued. And from what I've seen on Facebook and other posts related to some of the public concerns, a lot of that, I think, falls into that category of something that will be addressed at the time should a development come through. But that is something that upfront is acknowledged when someone applies for a future land use change, that they are responsible for making sure that services and facilities are in place at the time of the development permit. This request is for an amendment to 5 parcels located along or near Gibson Road in Escambia County. We're requesting a flume amendment from agricultural AG to agricultural residential. The property is generally located northeast of Highway 99 and southwest of 97 along Gibson Road. And it's our position that the current growth in the area suggests that an additional area of low-density residential development, in this case being 1 home per every 4 acres, would be in the general direction of the development of the surroundings. The proposed flume of agricultural residential is intended for routine agricultural and silvicultural related activities and low-density residential uses. This is the first application to come before Escambia County requesting agricultural residential. Many of you may recall the numerous hearings held with the creation and adoption of that future land use category. That did go to the Department of Economic Opportunity and to the Board of County Commissioners, and was approved, establishing a need, which I'll walk through in a moment, for something less than 1 house per 20 acres. Prior to your adoption of the agricultural residential category, the options were 1 per 20 in ag or 2 per 1 acre in RC. There was nothing in the middle, and there was a need recognized and established for diversity among housing uses, diversity of densities, and for something out in the area for there to be growth less than 1 per 20. And so we're here today as the first, but asking you to just keep in mind the reasons that you created this category, and specifically for a property or properties such as this to come through. When looking at the future land use change, the code and state statute requires that you consider certain categories of factors. First being environmental. Now, John showed a map of prime soils. There are some prime soils on the property. That's something that, again, at the development review process, when someone comes in to actually put a house on the ground, then they would consider the prime soils and develop around. So there wouldn't be something that would disturb any prime soils. The applicant would, or subsequent developer would be able to use development and planning techniques such as clustering to avoid prime soils. Same with wetlands, same with the flood zone. All of that, while they exist on the property, doesn't preclude the request for a change in future land use category. It's simply something that is noted that it exists, and at the time of development through the DRC process will be analyzed. And all permits and regulations at the state and county level would be sought at the time of development. But we do acknowledge and hope you to consider that the maximum density, if the change is made, wouldn't be the full 94 acres. If you take 376 and you divide it by 4, you get, not 94 acres, 94 dwelling units. However, the property is constrained by the prime soils and the flood zones and wetlands, so you wouldn't even have that maximum out there. As far as infrastructure goes, Molino Utilities has confirmed capacity, and in the packet we submitted is documentation from Molino Utilities as the water service provider, noting that the rezoning and future land use category won't have any impacts on their ability to provide services to the property. Within the packet submitted, there is a traffic generation report. We contend that the proposed increase in density will not impact Crabtree Church or Gibson Road. Now, we are aware that there are some existing deficiencies on, I believe, a bridge or two in the area, and I think that's something that you'll hear from the public. However, you'll also hear from the county that those bridges, that they're aware of the issues and that they're in the pipeline to have whatever issue is out there remedied.
Absolutely.
And I would also remind the board that the county has not adopted traffic concurrency. However, any use of those roadways will be, again, reviewed at the Development Review Committee and at the time of development review. There are no plans at this time to develop a subdivision, although Mr. Henry, the applicant, is a developer and home builder. He's also in the timber business and acquired this land through, for the purposes of that timber. However, given the need for housing and the current market, he's chosen to request the change to the properties that have existing road frontage. So the intent would be that an individual who wanted to purchase less than 20 acres to put a single-family home could come in and, purchase 4, 5, 10, whatever they saw necessary or deemed to suit their family. And so as those come in as one-offs, you would look at the development review process, and it would go through the standard county processes, building processes, either as a minor subdivision as the property gets divided or as a major subdivision subsequently. But at this point, there are no plans to develop, nobody's coming in right now planning to put 100 homes on that property. So wetlands and drainage, stormwater management, again, will be provided at the time of development review process. The stormwater system, any stormwater system would be designed for a 100-year storm event. Solid waste would be collected by ECUA, and there's disposal in the county landfill, which has adequate capacity. As far as schools go in the area, the current school assignments are K through 5 Molino Park Elementary. For middle school, it's Ernest Ward Middle, and Northview High is the high school. We did send notification to the school district advising of the change and asking for any feedback or comments regarding school capacity that may be impacted by the future land use change or rezoning. To date, I haven't received a response. I don't know when we come time for board input, Mr. Adams may have something to add on that point. There were no historic or archaeological resources found. But the important part is for you to consider the need and benefit. And again, I would direct your attention back to the creation of the agricultural residential category. The requested FLU change will allow for transitional residential development, which maintains a rural dynamic and protects the surrounding agricultural area. One thing I would point out as the public comes up, I would ask that each member who speaks, or if the board felt compelled to inquire, as to the acreage size of their homes. You know, when a person comes to the microphone, they state their name, they state their address. I would also be interested to learn who of the public speaking actually lives on 20 or greater acres, because the vast majority of residential uses surrounding this area are smaller than 20 acres. There are 2-acre parcels, 5-acre parcels, 7, 10, you know, having a home on 20 acres is expensive for us to purchase the 20 acres. It's also expensive to maintain. You have to have equipment to mow and to keep it up, you know, more so than someone like me on, you know, less than an acre with a single-family residential home. So there's a need for housing in the community, and that's documented through our application. There's also a need for the less than 20 acres in this area. And finally, I would like to just kind of walk through a couple of the state statutes governing what you're here to consider and what you're here to review with the comprehensive plan amendment. So it's the intent, the stated intent in the statute in 163-3161, subparagraph 4, that local governments have the ability to preserve and enhance present advantages, encourage the most appropriate use of land and water and resources consistent with the public interest, and to overcome present handicaps. That's a stated intent in the Florida state statutes regulating your action. And I would argue that the limitation of 1 per 20 is a handicap, and your ability, and one that exists in this area for homeowners, and that you have an ability to consider that and overcome it in your deliberations today. Another stated intent of 163 is to promote housing, and that's something that's also within your own comp plan. In 163-3168, the legislature has recognized the need for innovative planning and development strategies to promote a diverse economy and vibrant rural and urban communities. This is a rural community, and it's part of having a more diverse economy. And that's, again, something that the legislature has established in setting up the rules that govern the existence of the planning board, the existence of county planning staff, that one of your goals is to support and promote a diverse economy in rural communities. One other place I would direct your attention to is 163-3177, subparagraph 6-4, subpart 4, which talks about the amount of land designated for future land uses should allow the operation of real estate markets to provide adequate choices for permanent and seasonal residents and businesses, and may not be limited solely by the projected population. In our backup, we submit population data. You also have the population data from the HAF study, which supports this change. But in addition to that, not only the projected population, the future land use should allow the operation of real estate markets to provide choices. And I believe that this is specifically what we're asking for here today, for you to allow the market to provide choices for individuals who wish to develop residentially. And then finally, before I turn it over to staff, I would just again remind you of the private property rights element that was recently placed in your comprehensive plan by state statute. And while there are rights of neighbors who live in the general vicinity, they have a right to be here. They have a right to appear before you and offer their, I would say, for the future land use, they can provide some level of opinion that's different than in the rezoning. However, the applicant and landowner also has a right to make the best use of his property and to develop his property in a way that, so long as it aligns with your comprehensive plan and is consistent with your code, then it's well within his right to request this change. Staff has fully supported the change, and we would accept and adopt their findings to the extent I may not have spoke to a specific finding. We ask that you consider what's been provided in the written documentation, and I'm happy to take any questions at the appropriate time. Mr. Henry is also present if you have any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Bush. Board members, any questions at this time?
I have one. Ms. Bush, you mentioned at max build out, just based on the math, with the density and the available acreage, should be 94 homes. But then you also mentioned that due to wetlands and other considerations, it would be less than that. But in reality, through clustering, 94 homes could be max build out.
Depending on the level of clustering, I don't know what other infrastructure would be needed. The homes would be going on septic, so there's not the sewer requirement. But I would say 94 is a safe number. I don't believe, based on just standard development constraints, that you'll get that max, given the prime soils, even if there weren't prime soils and the wetlands, because a lot of this is, if you look at the map, it's not all road frontage. So you've got some that front the south portion of the parcels, front Crabtree Church, and then through the middle of the larger piece up there, Gibson Road. But there aren't existing roadways through those, through the acreage. So you also have to consider the fact that if someone comes in and let's say they want to buy 10 or 15 acres, but they want it not directly on Crabtree Church, but off in the middle somewhere, you know, and I don't know that that necessarily makes sense, but depending on where that is, you may also be talking about building roads and other infrastructure, which would take away from that ultimate density. But just at this stage, because we're not at development review, there are no plans, I think doing a simple 376 divided by, 4 acres, it equals about 94. And I'm a lawyer, not a mathematician, so you may want to pull that out and check me.
But to rephrase Jay's question, theoretically, through clustering, if the DRC were to approve after prime soils, after flood, after wet, theoretically, a lot could be sold that is smaller than 4 acres, and someone's property that they build a house on would be smaller than 4 acres.
Can I ask you a question for you, Mayor?
Sure.
No. Because of the AG, that is a requirement of the AG requirement. AR. That's that requirement. Once we get to that, and so therefore, guess what? You gotta have that 4 acres.
So the applicant needs to be aware then that there is a stop, there is a threshold
That's
to
the
the
minimum.
clustering.
That's a minimum. Yes, sir.
So there is a threshold to the clustering practice there because you can't go smaller than 4.
Correct.
Chair?
Yes, sir.
Yes, I was told on Appendix H, the school district had a reply. Can we go to Appendix H? And I had to beg for forgiveness. I've been given an iPad and I'm used to an old laptop and I'm having a hard time here.
Yes, sir. So Exhibit H of the applicant's request is an email that I sent to Mr. Sean Dennis, noting the change and advising of the acreage, the parcel numbers, and the listed schools. I did not receive a reply. And so
Okay.
all that Exhibit H is just showing where December 15th, we sent the email saying that this application was being prepared and asked for feedback. And to date, I haven't received anything.
Okay.
And within the submittal, I do note that the package would have been supplemented once we received a response.
Okay. And which middle school did you say it was?
So it's Molina Park Elementary, Ernest Ward, and Northview High. So
Okay.
it's Ernest Ward Middle.
And I'm just looking at capacity figures right now since I got caught a little bit off guard. But anyway, for the committee, as you know, as the growth continues, you know, Tate is closed to choice. Kingsville is closed to choice. So as more developments go out there, we'll be closing choice to a lot more schools. So I know that may not have any bearing on your decision, but for the public, I'm a non-voting member on the school board, on this committee. So, so anyway, so that's always a concern with us on how much growth will be allowed in the area.
Yeah, Mr. Brisky, Mr. John need to say something on that, please.
Thank you, Board. John Fisher. When a project of something like a subdivision or a multiple family, any type of number of units, more than like 3, comes into the county, we actually have a school concurrency form that the county fills out when we send it to the school board, Kimberly Reeves, who sends it up the chains for review. Based on that approval, whether they, submit back to us approval or not, it depends on the development order in order to approve a subdivision as well.
Right. Thank you, John. Yes. So, Mr. Adams, and I know that you're new to the process, but
Right.
in the site plan review process, Mr. John Fisher, who is a senior planner, if a project is submitted, let's be clear at this time. Let's be very clear. At this time, these are only speculations. Nothing has been submitted for my people to look at, to see if there would be capacity, to see if there may have interchanges. So let's be clear. Nothing has been submitted. This is at the 30,000 foot level. And I'll be saying more. But at that time, if a project is submitted, it would definitely go through a very thorough, succinct, and detailed site plan review process and look at all of the issues as it relate to a specific site development. And school concurrency is one. The state, we don't have school concurrency, but we do have interlocal agreement. And that's part of what it says. So, and if there's some capacity challenges, that's something at the time that the developer, whomever it may be, they will have to address at that time.
So, Mr. Jones, is that okay if I?
Yes, sir, go ahead.
Chair? So what you're saying is whether it's approved or not today, if they come back with additional development on capacity, then the school
Yes, sir.
concurrency will kick in to where they come back to us.
Absolutely.
And then we decide whatever impact requirements. Okay,
Yes, sir. Absolutely, Mr. Adams.
thank you.
Okay, thank you. Meredith, did you have anything more before we go into the staff presentation?
No, nothing from me at this time.
All right, John?
Okay. All right. Thank you, Chair and Board. John Fisher again. Just do have quite a few little things to go through here. I'm trying to summarize as much as possible, but just for the record, I want to get the most important things in here and explain go through each criteria as well. So if everyone just bear with me just for a second here. I'll try to go through this as quickly as I can. So on the large scale, 2022-02 Gibson Road Crabtree, this is a requesting future land use map amendment to change the future land use category of 376.61 plus acres from ag to AR, agricultural residential. Through the first set of staff analysis, the availability of facilities and services, the availability of public facilities and services for the site of the future land use map amendment requires analysis of general demands of its purposes, proposed use. All specific levels of services standards established by Escambia County are evaluated for compliance during the review process prescribed by the LDC for approval of proposed development. Things like sanitary sewer, and require new service connections. The adopted level of service standards for sanitary sewer established in a comprehensive plan states that the level of service requirements shall be based upon the equivalent residential connection calculated by the provider. The applicant must coordinate with the local provider to ensure the capacity is available for any project. Once the project is submitted, all level services will be achieved and the project will be further evaluated during the site plan review process. Under the solid waste established in the comprehensive plan, the adopted OS standard for solid waste disposal and the county 6 pounds per capita per day. The Perdido landfill current build out of 424 acres landfill is 74 acres. Based on the population growth projections and estimated annual class 1 municipal solid waste received, the estimated remaining life of the landfill is 68 years. Once a project is submitted, the level of service will be evaluated during the site plan review process. Under portable water, the applicant has provided a letter from Molino Utilities stating that it is the service provider for portable water in the area covering all of Gibson Road and Crabtree Church Road in Molino, Florida. Molino Utilities Incorporated states that the rezoning the parcels will not affect the capacity of their system. Once the project is submitted to the Development Review Committee, the level of service standards will be evaluated during the site plan review process. Under the stormwater management, the applicant has documented that it understands the requirements for stormwater management. The applicant acknowledges that separate requirements and permitting through other state agencies such as the Northwest Florida Water Management District may be required. If approved based on the proposed operations, further analysis and evaluations will be conducted during the site plan review process. The applicant must ensure that all required state and federal agencies are contacted and that all required permits are obtained. The presence of sensitive lands on the site may require a more in-depth assessment by the agency involved. The county stormwater engineer will evaluate the proposed project to ensure all stormwater management standards are met. Once the project is formally submitted, all LOS will be evaluated during the site plan review process. Streets and access. The TTO staff did a review of this case. The direct access to properties is on Gibson Road, a nearby road that may be provided. Indirect access is Crabtree Church Road. Gibson Road is a 2-lane rural roadway approximately 20 feet wide with 10 feet travel lanes and no paved shoulders. Crabtree Church Road is also 2 travel lanes and is 20 feet wide. Right-of-way is 66 feet on Gibson Road and 66 feet on Crabtree Church Road, so that is compliant with county new standards. The county does not have any proposed improvement projects scheduled for Gibson Road at this time. Likewise, FDOT does not have any projects scheduled for Gibson Road. Gibson Road is a rural roadway with an estimate volume of less than 1,000 vehicles per day. The 2020 daily traffic volume on Crabtree Church Road was 1,700. There's no significant traffic concerns related to this future land use change requested. The future land use change from ag to AR does not in itself indicate a higher intensity trip generation. If any development plans for the proposed future land use and rezoning are put forth with the application should be accompanied by a full traffic impact study that includes Highway 97, US 29, and County Road 99. Please note that TTO's review of the facility is based on the application submittal, so that the comments above hold no bearing to any TTO comments during the development review process. Under public school facilities, the representative from the Escambia County School District will review the comments on the proposals that could have an impact on the project school capacities at the level of service. Suitable with the future land use map amendment is the proposed requires an analysis from the characteristics of the site and its resources related to comprehensive plan goals. Objectives and policies for these proposed suitable is the degree to which the existing characteristics and limitations of the land and water are compatible with the proposed use of or development. Compliance with the specific regulations and standards established by Escambia County, including those for public facilities and services, are evaluated during the development review processes prescribed by the LDC approval of proposed development. The impacts of the land and future land use categories. The current agriculture future land use is intended for routine agricultural and silviculture related activities with very low density residential uses. Also allows for commercial activities limited to those to agricultural and silvicultural in support of agricultural activities such as seed, feed, and food outlets, farms, equipments, and repair and veterinarian services. Range of allowable uses are agricultural, silvicultural, residential, recreation, public, and civic. Supported commercial. The residential density has a max density of 1 per 20 acres and a maximum intensity of 0.25 floor area ratio. The proposed agricultural residential AR FLU is intended for the routine agricultural and silviculture related activities, low density residential Also allows for commercial activities limited to those of agricultural, silvicultural support, agricultural activities such as seed, feed, and food outlets, farm equipment, and repair veterinarians. The range of allowable silviculture, residential, public, and civic supports the commercial residential density as a maximum of 1 dwelling unit per 4 acres and a maximum of 0.25 acres. The approval of the amendment will allow residential uses range of silviculture, recreational, public, and civic, or supported commercial, the designations and land uses development of the president. The AR and the agricultural have the same uses, floor area ratio. The only change is the density with these changes. Impacts of wellheads. Under wellhead provisions, the property is not located in a wellhead protection area, so the future land use has no impact to the area. All new development will have to submit a development review process to be approval with a development order for further proceed. Historical significant sites. The future land use does not have any significant impacts. The applicant provided a general report from the Florida Master Site File TRS search where no protected significant historical or agricultural resources on the site were found. If any historical or cultural resources are located during site development, the project will respond accordingly. Impact of natural environment. The proposed future land use change acreage contains hydraulic soils and wetlands are indicated in the National Wetlands Inventory map. The proposed also contains approximately 40 acres plus or minus of USD prime soils. While the use of the property is silvicultural, indicates protected trees would be limited to the bottom lands at the time development is proposed. A tree survey would be required. Under future land use map designations, the proposed amendment is approximately to the existing infrastructure that is utilized by other similar uses within the area. The proposed AR FLU makes for a balance of density between 1 dwelling unit, 20 acres, and AR 1 dwelling unit per 4 acres in rural communities is 2 dwelling units per acre. As previously elaborated, the site has been evaluated for portable water, sanitary sewer, solid waste disposal, stormwater management, and traffic concurrency. If the amendment is approved, the parcel will go through a quasi-judicial rezoning process. The completed application packet will be reviewed and evaluated for concurrency as part of the site development review process at the time of any new infrastructure development is intended. The proposed future land use would limit any major urban sprawl through the characteristics of existing development pattern and allowable uses in AR. Under the location of existing facilities, the proposed future amendment sites being proposed is to establish compatibility with the surrounding area that includes agricultural, silviculture, residential, recreational, public, and civic, limited or supported commercial, which this site seems to meet. Includes staff findings.
Okay, thank you. Board members, any questions at this point for staff? Jay?
Do we know what the max daily volume is on Crabtree Church Road and Gibson Road?
I believe they, TTO responded with 1,700.
I think is that the max? Or is that the current?
That is the current traffic volume is 1,700.
Do we know what the maximum is on those two roads?
I would have to refer to TTO to get those, what the maximum would be, but yeah, the daily traffic average is 1,700.
And we do have a representative from TTO who's present. If she wanted to respond, she can. Or if she need to get more information, she could try to gather that for you. But she is here if there's a response that is needed.
Yeah, I'd just like to know what the numbers are, the maximum daily volume.
Okay, come forward, please. If you'll please state your name and position for the record. We are not in quasi-judicial at this time, so just your name and position be adequate.
I'm Terry Malone, and I'm the transportation planner for the county.
And I do want to add she's very, very modest. She is AICP certified as well as a transportation planner.
Okay, thank you.
And the question was how much volume. I think that you'd probably get double on that, but you'd have to improve the sides of the road right now. There are no shoulders on that road. Oh, I'm
Sorry, would you speak closer in the microphone? Yes.
There are no shoulders on the road, so probably 3,000 to 4,000. But after that, it would change pretty dramatically.
And it's typical for when it goes through the site review, the development review process, that your group is involved in looking at the traffic on the roadways.
Right. The maximum amount right now that I figured out was, well, we were just about 900 vehicles, and they would impact all these roads.
Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Jay, that answer your question?
It does.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Meredith, any questions for staff before we go into public comment?
No, no questions.
Okay. John, is that, you don't have anyone else to call? Horace? Yes,
sir.
go ahead.
And I do want to state this. I think it's very, very important. We like to try to be fair to all parties. Now, again, there's nothing that is being proposed. And also if this is approved or made a recommendation by the board, the purpose of the ordinance was to address the change, was to address the challenge it would be for even an individual property owner. And my people, we have that all the time, to want to pull up a home on one for 20. And that was the intent of trying to provide a transition, to eliminate. So yes, I know most people saying subdivisions, and if that's the process, we got to go through it, and whatever the requirements are, that's what they got to do. But just remember, this will, even if it is approved, to help someone who may not want to, a piece of land, and if the change go through, I got some farm animals, I got some cows, I got some things, and I just want to live out in the country, and I need at least 4 acres, not 1 per 20. So we got to keep that at a balance to try to be fair to everyone. If it is approved, subdivision is always an option. But even if it's not, an individual private property owner, single owner, this can give them the opportunity to come and meet my staff and say, hey, I got it. I want a house with animals and horses to run around if I need to, without having an impact on the agrarian lifestyle out there. That is the reason why this change was proposed, it was approved, it was advocated for at that time to address, I think it was mentioned in the state statutes, to overcome that handicap. That's what I'm using the language of the state statute. It says handicap. And at that time, the Board of County Commissioners on DEO went up. They said, yes, let's provide the opportunity to address this. I want that to stay at the prime front as well. Not trying to eliminate any concerns of any of the property owners that may be impacted, but facts must be spoken with truth and clarity.
Thank you, Horace. Now let me try to put a little bit of this in layman's terms, because I'm sure a lot of you are sitting here going, wow. The first thing that I think you'll notice is in this portion of the hearing where we're in the future land use, you'll notice, and I'll ask the staff to keep this up on the board as we go through the public comments, the criteria. You won't be able to see all of them at once, but as you can see, there's a very detailed evaluation that the staff must do to get to this point, and it has to be consistent in each one of those categories, okay? You've heard us multiple times say that there has been no project submitted yet. So some of the things that you may be here to speak about, we don't know, because we don't have a project submitted yet. And when a project comes in, it goes through the development review committee, the site review process, and all those levels of standards that John addressed in his criteria.
Absolutely.
Those get addressed at a different time. That is a public hearing as well, okay? So I don't want you to think that, this is your only shot at it. That's a public hearing as well, and you could have comments. When a project meets all of those objectives and policies and goals, it's typically going to be recommended for approval simply because it meets all of those standards. Now, I'm not trying to predict what the board will vote. I'm just telling you, if it meets a lot of those standards or all of those standards, policies and goals, it's typically recommended for approval. The next step would then be go back to our rezoning, which that's quasi-judicial, so each person who speaks will be required to be sworn in, subject to cross-examination. That's not the case in this hearing. We are in open planning board hearing, okay? I just want you to understand there's a difference between the two procedures. Right now, we are considering the large-scale amendment from agricultural to agricultural residential. And you've heard Horace, the attorney, and John all testify that that has already been approved through the planning board, the county commissioners, and the State Department of Economic Opportunity. So it's gone through all those processes, that is a legitimate process to go from agriculture to agricultural residential. Now, obviously, they haven't voted on this case. That's what we're here to do today. But I just wanted to let you know that that is an established flu change that's already been done. So there's no need to try to break that down into pieces because it's already approved, it's already been done. We need to stay specific on the items that we're dealing with today on this case. It's real important because, again, the board has a very narrow purview of what we can vote on. Okay? I know it's very confusing. I've been on this board for 18 years and I still get confused sometimes, okay? Let me say something else to all of you who live out this way. I live out this way. I live on 10 acres. So I get it. I understand rural lifestyle and I understand a lot of your concerns, okay? I want you to understand we have a certain set of rules we have to play by, and you've got to address your comments to the items that are in these categories or we can't consider it. Okay, I just want to make sure that's really clear because a lot of times we have folks come in and they want to talk about a lot of things and they are not in our consideration or our purview, so we just want to make that very clear what we can and can't consider, okay? So with that, we're going to go through, they're in no particular order, they're just kind of how they were handed to me. Each person does have a time limit to speak. There is a buzzer that will go off. I'll ask you to please wrap up your comments when that buzzer goes off. That way we have an opportunity to hear from everyone. You do have an opportunity to go in front of the county commissioners and speak on this subject as well. So this is not your last chance to speak on it. When we go back into quasi-judicial, which is the rezoning hearing, only those people who speak at the microphone under oath will be allowed to speak to it at the Board of County Commissioners meeting. So if you speak and then you decide to leave, you'll still be allowed to speak about the flu at the Board of County Commission, but you won't be allowed to speak at the rezoning. So you would have to speak at both if you want to preserve your rights to speak. And that's very important because they look at this and they listen to the transcript. It's all recorded verbatim, and they know who spoke and what the testimony and evidence was at the hearing, okay? So with that, we're going to go directly into public comment. We have a lot of them. We will be taking a break in probably about a half an hour just to give everybody a chance to use the facilities and stretch a little bit. But we're going to try to get through at least the first 10 of these before the break, okay? Catherine Garcia. Catherine Garcia, okay, I'm sorry. If you'll please state your name and address for the record and then begin your comments, please.
Would be perfect. Thank you guys so much.
Steve, 1, 2. Good.
I'm Catherine Garcia.
And you live at?
6060 Crabtree Church Road.
Thank you. Go ahead, miss.
I think that the animals should keep their homes such as trees and bushes. Thank you.
Thank you. Has a long history in Public Works. Okay, Brandy Crabtree. Okay. Your name and address for the record, please.
Brandy Crabtree, 6060 Crabtree Church Road, Molino. You guys touched on a lot of things that I kind of already had planned to say, and a lot of it is for the development. But my main issue is it feels like we're kind of putting the cart before the horse, I guess, like getting it approved, and you guys all touched on that. But the clustering, who's going to really hold them liable to that 4 acres? Because even in the past, there's been the tree issue in Escambia County. It was like, hey, don't touch these beautiful trees. Someone drives by and hey, they weren't supposed to, but they did it anyway. So I guess that's my main concern, is who is going to hold them liable to that? Sorry.
May I, Chairman?
Yeah, I'm going to let Horace explain, because this would be a good time for him to explain to everybody what that next step looks like and what they do in the DRC process.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, that's a very, very good question. And this is just general, but it's very, very specific. If an applicant came, if this was already done, if an applicant came and they wanted to approve, automatically my staff will ask them the first question. Do you have 4 acres? Or whatever the acres, 4 acres minimum. Right. If they don't, guess what?
Right.
It's done. Okay. If they don't have it, because see, that is a comprehensive plan requirement. And it's not easy to change those provisions. It requires, believe me, I've been in enough of them. It's an uphill battle. And it is not easy, because that is the state law requires consistency. The comprehensive plan, that is the ruling document. The Land Development Code, that's just the implementing regulation. So they come in, individual single family home, they want to, even for the subdivision, we would go through it, have a pre-application meeting. We'll look at my planners, which, wait a minute, you're going to have 4 acres. And if they don't do it, they got to keep on working at it to get those 4 acres. Once they get that 4 acres established, then they will have a preliminary plat review meeting with staff, many stormwater, wetlands, flood zone. People say it's not a weak process at all. And my staff is very bold, and they're intelligent enough to say, you do not meet the requirements. And they go back and forth, trying to address the requirements with the requirements of the Land Development Code and Comprehensive Plan. So if they don't meet those, they don't even come to the point of having a preliminary plat hearing. It stops. Then it proceeds. So we will hold them to the fire because the law says we have to.
I understand that, and I do, and I think that you guys do a great job, generally speaking, but there's always one, especially when it comes to, say there's, a big builder as opposed to just me, a residential person.
Ma'am.
They're going to have a lot more capability to get that done, as opposed to where, you guys are talking in all these big fancy words, and we don't know those, but he has a great lady over here that knows all this great information, and he does it all the time. So it's not really a fair playing field to begin with, but I do understand.
Well, I can tell you right now.
Try to be fair to the best of your ability.
I know. I can tell you, my staff, we have to. I have to have ethics, not only with what I do with the county. Right. I try to live by a certain amount of ethics myself. So I try to give all the help to every citizen, from, I don't care if it's whomever it may be, to the lowest person that may not understand. As a matter of fact, I will probably give more to try to educate them through the process. So we don't look at it because it's believe me, we do tell many people that are developers, I'm sorry, you don't meet the Land Development Code. We have to. The Land Development Code says we do not. And if we do not, there's enough people that do know enough about, that have a little bit of inkling of planning, they can challenge the decision, go before the court, come before the BOA hearing, and if my decision, if our decision is not based upon the rule of law, facts, it could be overturned. And guess what? We have been. So it's not an uneven. We try to be as clear, try to go by the processes. Now the code is the code. It's the requirements, they are the requirements. Right. So I can't go by what ifs. or, or maybe I want to, I'll go by the plain language of the Land Development Code. So to address your question, we try to treat everyone as equitable and as fair as we possibly can with the rule of law that we're governed by. And that's the truth.
So I guess, again, just like saying, you know, this is a code and we're here trying to get that changed, you know, making an exception for, you know, this development. But this development also isn't just going to be, you know, this same builder has also purchased other land outside of this. So, you know, our concern is we start with this little spot zoning here and there, and then we jump into, well, what about this over here, and then that down there, and then it becomes a big thing. You know, so that's, you know, where I'm coming from. I'm definitely not trying to be rude.
No,
or
you're not.
disrespectful to anybody. You guys all work hard, and we really appreciate it. But this is just, you know, this, I grew up, obviously, Crabtree Church Road, I grew up there. But before the road was even paved, you know, I've lived there my whole life. My dad's, like, homestead of the area. Like, it's a family thing. So it is more maybe emotional for me, and I don't want to come off like that, but there are a lot of facts that, you know, I think a lot of people just driving by miss. You know, I've rode horses through the whole area out here, and there's a lot of springs out there that you may not know if you just go out and test soil here or over there. You know, they're all throughout the area. And I know the wetlands are noted, and I'm sure the developmental people will get to all that if it becomes a thing, but when the first flue change came through, it was said in some of those meetings, you know, this isn't going to be anytime soon. And that's kind of the same thing that's being set down. You know, this is just, we're just talking, we're just figuring this out. But, you know, it is an issue. So, and the last thing that I kind of want to touch on, which again is probably developmental, and I'm sorry, but my nephew attends Ernest Ward Middle School, and he has to, for him to get to school from Molino, well, it's on Molino Road, Barano Park area, Settle Road to be exact, he has to ride the bus for an hour and a half. He has to catch it with high schoolers so he can get to Ernest Ward. Sure, the 94 Homes isn't going to be a whoa, blow your mind kind of traffic thing for if you drive 29, you're probably used to it. But those 94 kids are, you know, going to add even more trouble to an already struggling transportation system for those middle school kids at least. So, but that was probably my timer. So thank you guys very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Crabtree. Monty Crabtree?
And Mr. Briskin, I think we need to, I know the 94 number been thrown out, but let's be clear. It may be less than that.
Right.
So I don't want us to leave 94 homes. That's not the case. It may definitely be less than that. Once we start looking at the constraints of the land, that's very, very important. And they may decide to go with 5 acres, 10 acres, if it is going to be developed in subdivision. So I want to be clear from the onset of that, so we won't leave with that understanding. We do not know at this time.
Right.
Chairman, can I make a comment just about
Yes,
the transportation? Also remember, as more people do go out there, the school boards may actually add more buses. Absolutely. They may actually add more services for y'all. So just as a
Okay. Thank you, sir.
My name is Monty Crabtree, 6060 Crabtree Church Road. I guess I'm confused there, talking about this future land use. You saying it's a done deal.
Now, let me explain.
Why is it back up?
Let me explain what I meant. I meant that the changes to our comprehensive plan have already been done to allow for the AR, agricultural residential district. Not this particular case has not been decided, just that the category has become available. Before that category became available, you had to have 1 unit per 20 acres. It went through the process to allow for this to be a possibility. Doesn't mean that this one's automatically approved. It just gives that possibility that it could be applied for, which is in this case what has happened. Okay, so.
Still confused, the area all around Banner Park area, has that been changed?
Nothing has been changed. It has to come through this board and the Board of County Commissioners.
If somebody brings it up at a future date.
Yes, sir.
They had to go through the same process again.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
That's correct.
I got you. And, like I say, I've lived there for over 70 years. And all around this area there. I know Mr. Henry, supposedly this is the first that he's going for to change, but he's bought 1,700 acres around there. It's gonna come back to you again, I guarantee you there, to redone it, rehash again. And it's, like my daughter was saying, there's springs everywhere. I know you got all the wetlands marked, but there are springs everywhere around there. It runs in a creek, it runs in a Perdita River. And it's not a good area right there. This is all timberland that the Presley's family has owned for over 100 years. And now he's bought it there, 1,700 acres. It was all prime woodlands there. And now it's already been cut. They already clear cut most of it, and it's, I mean, it looks terrible. And it's basically, they got it up for sale for lots and all there. I mean, it's, I know you keep saying, well, it's not a done deal yet, but he's looking at it as a done deal because he got all this land up for sale there, and probably within a year you're gonna see homes everywhere around there. Like I say, I miss lived there all my life and used to that there, and I can't see them doing a wooded area like it. I know everything's moving north because you can't go south. You got the water down here and all, but something needs to look at it and reinstated there. I mean, it's, and I know forgot her name there. She's saying 94 homes there. There's going to be a lot more than 94 homes there. I guarantee you, it's coming. That's all I got to say there. Thank you.
Hey, good morning. My name is Lumen Wilson. I live at 6128 Blackberry Lane. So this is discussing the flu. You know, I want to first appreciate you guys. The decisions that sometimes put in front of you is not always easy to make. And no matter what happens, somebody's going to disagree with the decision. Okay, so I appreciate your time and your effort, everything that you guys put in, the staff, everybody. Okay. I've got problems with that comprehensive plan already. I wish that I would have been privy on what was going on. It's not anything that nobody let me know. I just wasn't aware. Okay, so the flu issue that I have. So if I'm speaking correctly, this is where we can talk about infrastructure. Is that correct? Okay. My concerns is public safety in that area, that immediate area. There's 5 bridges that you have to cross to access this area. Every one of those bridges are in despair. Gibson Road has been supposedly on the agenda since 2018 to replace. If you notice, if you'll go back to one of your pictures where it shows on Gibson Road the east view of the zoning signs, you'll notice that Gibson Road bridge is shut down to 1 lane. Big stop sign in the middle of a straightaway road. The reason that stop sign is there is shutting that bridge down to 1 lane because it's dilapidated. Okay. Not only is this infrastructure is in critical condition, but it's also too low for the surrounding areas. You start cutting this timber and you start having that stormwater runoff, and I know there will be holding ponds put in place and all this, that, and the other, but you start increasing the amount of water and the things that are running off this property, you're going to do nothing but put those bridges underwater. 5 ways in to access this property. Every way in, you have to cross one of these bridges. One of them is 1948. Several of the others are wood piling bridges. I understand everywhere in our community, everywhere in Escambia County, there's issues with our bridges. But this is an issue for this immediate area. Not only are you putting the public safety of the ones that live in this community, but you're putting the safety in chance of one of these 94 homes, this family home, okay? We keep saying that nothing is submitted. Nothing is guaranteed. Well, then why are we here talking about it? Why are we here talking about it if we're not sure what we're going to do? Why do we even waste our time to deal with it? March, the comprehensive plan was approved by this board to move ahead. Okay? At that time, a lot of comments were made, oh, this is just a stepping stone to get us to where we needed to be. Less than a year later, guess what? That comprehensive plan is now in effect. You got 376 acres that is potentially going to get passed to allow for some things in this comprehensive plan to take place. I don't agree with it. There's some public safety issues, not only with the roads and the bridges. Our fire department up there is all volunteer. The closest staffed volunteer, the closest staff fire department is 14 miles away, Cantonment. But anyhow, I appreciate your time. I appreciate everybody's time. I appreciate the community showing up and voicing their concerns. And thank you.
Horace, within the confines of the flue change, can you explain what might potentially happen if a project comes to development review for addressing these bridges, which obviously is a concern?
Yes. And Mr. Wilson,
Horace, turn your mic on, please.
I talk so much. Thank you for your email that you sent me. I appreciate that. And because of that email, I myself reached out to the county engineer, Ms. Joy Jones, on yesterday. And I think she already has some information on this because she was made aware of it and contacted as well. And this is an email directly from her. And I think this information even was relayed to at the administrative level. As provided to CMR, that's Community and Media Relations, because someone had reached out to them, Andy, this morning, 30% design for the Gibson Road bridges is in 30% design due in March of this year. This is just for, now, this is because the issue came up. Contract to complete design and construction, April 2023. This is from her. Pending permit approval and weather and other various constraints. But at least they have a timeline. They have a tentative timeline. And we do have the assistant county administrator here. We know sometimes those things changes, but the engineering department is already aware of what's going on with those bridges, and they are it's in progress. It is in progress of being remedied and being fixed. That's from the engineering department.
Okay, Horace, follow up to that. If a project were to come forward, which we don't have a specific project at this point, would that be something that would have to be considered before that would happen?
Yes, sir. Yes,
okay.
Sir. Yes, sir. Yes, it would.
Mr. Wilson?
You know, if I could just ask this board that with some details on that particular bridge, there's some others with issues as well, and we can go into details. But just with today's decision moving forward, I would request that this application be not approved until these repairs and this situation is taken care of.
Okay. We don't.
Can't do that.
Again, that's not something that's in the purview of this board.
Absolutely.
Now, we just heard testimony from Horace that before a development can be approved, so before any construction can go on the ground, these things will have to be addressed.
Absolutely.
Am I abundantly clear with that, Horace? Is that
yes?
This would have to be addressed before a subdivision or any kind of development would have to go in?
Yes, sir. Access management and transportation and the infrastructure is part of this. It's part of the subdivision review process. So access management, if a subdivision is proposed on any subdivision that's proposed, and the infrastructure is a primary component that have to be upgraded or anywhere because that's access management. So yes, those things have to be, and plus this is in the engineering realm of the house. So they're looking at it. They have deadlines. They have contracts that they got to address as well. So it would be a joint effort with collaboration.
Okay. All right. Tab Ferguson.
My name's Tav Ferguson. I live at 4680 Settle Road. I have 20 acres. You know, we were talking about the bridges. That's, y'all covered that real good. And also, what is the name of the timber company that Mr. Henry owns? Oh, okay. And then, well, just curious what the name was. I mean, everything else has your name on it. I was just wondering what that was. You know, we're talking about infrastructure, school buses and all that. well, we need to address some of the stuff today. My neighbors, I got kids that live all down, Miss Crabtree's brother lives right down the road from me. And she talked about how long it is. The school bus won't even go down that road. So that's an issue, a major issue I'm concerned about. And then the attorney brought up the 20 acres and being able to keep up with it. Well, I don't have a problem with it. I got neighbors that got 80 plus. They never had a problem with it. So I don't know where that is coming into play. And she indicated it was some type of a handicap for having that much property. Well, I moved out there for that reason, to be out, have that property, to do what I want on it, and to be no neighbors around me. That was the main purpose. And then also, I don't understand what the diverse economy part is. I mean, it's my understanding that we've had businesses try to come in out there and it gets shot down because there's no sewer whatsoever. Anywhere, not even close. I think it goes up somewhere up on 29, but I'm sure there's going to be septic systems, but you're not going to support businesses. I mean, Tom Thumb, they can't even keep gas, much less everything else, and that's a big issue. And when you talk about clustering, what does that mean?
John?
So, excuse me. So clustering is a provision where if there's prime farmland, wetlands, historical significance, where the county will, you would have to put those areas in basically like a conservation easement in order to get the eligibility requirement to have a reduced setback, a reduced lot width. Those are basically the only things that really pertain to clustering. And with something with large acre lots, clustering really doesn't help out any one building. It's more meant for internal urban areas. So when you have quarter acre lots, when someone wants to reduce a 60-foot wide lot to a 50-foot wide lot, that would help them get a subdivision in. When you're dealing with 4 acres, that's not going to help anything reducing lot width or reducing setbacks. So the clustering provisions doesn't really help out this, any development there. They would still have to not build on the prime farmlands or wetlands. Those are discouraged at all completely without any type of FDE Corps of Engineer permitting allowed.
Mr. Adams was talking about the school stuff. Can you give me the capacities of each of those 3 schools right now?
I cannot. I've got this Apple, but I think Northview is around, we got about 60 capacity left on it.
I heard it was less than that.
There was a conflict in the numbers between what, you can go to school choice office, but I would tell you from the enrollment reports I got,
Well, the point of,
Secretary is a little different.
the point I'm trying to make is you get 94 houses in there and you got 3 kids each house. I mean, look at Cantonment, what they had to do. You know, I left Cantonment to get away from all that. You know, and we need to figure that out. And as of right now, to my knowledge, there's only 2 deputy sheriffs that patrol from Cantonment to Century. Okay, here lately we've been having a lot of stuff going on out there, and residents have to take matters in their own hands. And when you start bringing in more people, you're going to have more of these problems. And we didn't move out there for that. I haven't been out there since 2017, but my neighbors have been out there forever. And this is the way of life we want to preserve. And we don't. I mean, the roads can't really handle it at all. And I don't know how Molina's going to be able to provide utilities. We got people that it goes down every other day for them. The lines are breaking, everything else. So you got a big infrastructure problem out there, and I think that's something that seriously needs to be addressed before we even go further with this. Okay, that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I just wanted to make a comment. I wouldn't say this project would cause a big problem, but if more construction comes in, we would have to do, either bring portables in, do what we have to do on the school district side. But the interlocal agreement with concurrency with the school district, as we know, we got a pending document that we're trying to, and actually I think we're going to do some more changes to it. So, because I think it was in 2012, and when Wilson Robertson, a lot of concurrency was kind of taken out of that interlocal. But anyway, that's another subject, but I think we would have to address that in the future with that interlocal. And I talked to Chairman Begosh about it in our meeting the other day on that interlocal. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. At this point, we're going to just take a brief recess. If you see members of the planning board in any of the facilities or in the hallway, please do not speak to us about this because we will be having quasi-judicial hearing and we cannot speak to you about it. So you have to speak in open forum. So it's 10:03. We're going to come back into session at 10:10.
Okay, I'm not worried about it. I just have to let somebody know, get somebody else. Yeah, well, we got 3.5, well, 4 hours till 2. Okay. Oh, really? Okay.
And it's done. It's a done deal. I understand. I really got some hard mind about it just by not knowing.
It's never too late to get involved. It's never too late to leave if they get your water out there. So you can stay comfortable.
That's all it takes is one door open. Let's plant it back in timber and let's start teaching them what it's like to raise timber and take care of it.
Everyone, please start finding your seats and come back to order. Okay, we are still in the public comment portion of the hearing for the future land use large-scale amendment. And I want to come back to kind of, I guess, the way we're doing things here and make sure that we're on track. Up on the board, you'll see some of the staff's findings concerning this hearing that we're in right now. And we heard a presentation from the staff that it's consistent in all the categories. Okay, they went through each one of them. And we're getting a little bit off track of the purview of this board. I keep coming back to that because, not saying that these aren't great comments and we want to answer them, but I just want you to understand it's very specific what we can consider. These are the things that we can consider. So in an effort to try to streamline this a little bit, when you come up, I'm going to ask you to tell me which one of these standards are you concerned about, and if the staff has found that it meets that standard, I'd like to hear why you think it hasn't met that standard. That way we can stay on track with these items that are on, that we can vote on. Again, I'm not dismissing that the things you're saying are not important. Obviously, bridges falling in is very important. But I need to know, for these gentlemen up here that have to vote, we can only vote on these items. And I know it's hard to understand, why can't you consider all of this? It's just the rules of this particular board. We have very specific purview that we have to vote on. Some people say it's the cart before the horse. Well, you can't even go to submitting a development for review until all of this has been sorted out. So that's why they have to do this first. If they then get recommended approval and get approved, then they have the opportunity to come back and submit it to the development review and the site review process that Horace was explaining, and all these other things that a lot of you have concerns about are considered. So just understand that this is a multi-step process, and we're only voting on step one of it today, which is these pieces, okay? And that's all we're allowed to vote on. I'd love to vote on some of the other stuff. I have a lot of input on some of that stuff too, okay? But we're not allowed to. We're only allowed to vote on these things that are presented in these findings. So I'm going to ask you to look at this board, and if there's some that we need to scroll to get to what you want, say, hey, I'm concerned about stormwater management. The county has found that it meets the standard, but here's why I think it hasn't met the standard. Because if you can show us that it hasn't met the standard, then that's something we can get our teeth into and make a decision on. But if you just come up and you talk about things like springs, important. I'm an outdoorsman. I love springs in the wilderness, and the code has things in place to protect them. But just because there's a spring on the property doesn't take away someone's development rights from it. Okay, there may be additional protections in place for those things, but doesn't take away development rights. Property rights are very strong in the United States. Okay, so I'm just asking you, let's stick to these items. When we get back into quasi-judicial, it's a very narrow purview. We can only consider, and we'll bring those up on the board, those 5 categories. Okay, so I just want you to understand, I know it's confusing. There's a lot of why is this the way it is? I'm just telling you, there's a very specific purview for this board, and this is how it's done, okay? So, yes, sir, I'm going to allow you just a brief comment.
Everything that I talked about was what she brought up at the beginning of the meeting.
Okay. Everything that you've said has been recorded and is on the record. You'll have the opportunity to tell the commissioners that as well. I'm just asking that when future speakers come up, that they address each one of these policies that they're concerned about.
I'm just saying that if she brought it up, it should be fair.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, and everything you've said's been recorded. We've heard it all, and it's all, you'll have an opportunity to tell the commissioners as well. The commissioners have a lot more authority than this board does. Let me just tell you that, okay? Because you vote for them. We're volunteers on an appointed board here, okay? Everybody up here is volunteering time away from their career and their work as well. So we're not paid employees for the county or anything like that. We're all volunteers. We do this because we try to make our community better. Any of you are welcome to put in your name in the hat to become a planning board member, okay? Yeah, go see Horace. Sometimes people have enough of it and they resign, and we need people. So it's sometimes a thankless job, but it's giving back to the community and trying to help is why we do it. So with that, we're going to go back to our next speaker, Craig Exner. Exner, yes, sir. Name and address for the record, please.
My name is Craig Exner. I live at 4601 Highway 196, Molina, Florida. And I will go along. I live on a parcel of 15 acres. I would ask the question of the board, other than the chairman, how many of you live north of Cantonment? By raising your hand. Thank you.
I want to respond. I have lived north of Cantonment for an extended period of time.
Okay, well,
and I still have property north of Cantonment.
Thank you. My title is I am president of the Barron Park Historical Society, founded in 1993. One of our goals is to preserve the history of the Barron Park area. Now, when I consider Barron Park, I consider anything north of 196, bounded by the Atmore Highway, bounded by 99 going there. We have one road in, Barron Park, I call it Barron Park Road, it's 196. We have one road out, it's a Molina Road, and I don't know the number of that. But we do at this present time have farming in that area, roughly about 100 square miles, 10 by 10 is probably what that is. And the old Barron farm is farmed by a gentleman, Samuel Walker. He's from Oak Grove. And I say that because in planting season, as well as harvest season, he has to transport large equipment down through those areas. We also have Eric Cohen, who is living in Walnut Hill, has to do the same thing. We also have a smaller hay farm at the end of Crabtree Church Road that has to move equipment there. So this impact and consistency with what this is what I want to do. I want to maintain the 20 acres and one house. Just a little history. In early 1900s, the Barron Park Land Company sold land in Barron Park. They sold it, and there was a 20-acre limit of what they could sell. They sold it at $60 an acre. I dare say that Mr. Henry is going to sell it at the same amount of there. But I would urge you to look at the consistency. Now, the last thing I want to say has to do with history. I don't want to be derogatory, but I have not heard from the county as far as the history of Barron Park, and I am the president of the Barron Park Historical Society. We have a museum at the old school. I have not heard from those, the lawyer or Mr. Henry, to come up and find out what is the history of Barron Park. Is this going to be consistent when he develops this? So I would say that please keep it, recommend it, one house and 20 acres, and I'll give you an invite to come visit our museum at the Barron Park Historical Society at the Community Center. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Bonnie Exner?
Mr. Chairman, let me clarify something, just to make it completely accurate. My wife has property north.
Good afternoon, or soon to be, anyhow. My name is Bonnie Exner. I live at 4601 Highway 196, Molina, Florida. And I'd like to address the school density. Mr. Adams, questions you had? I found out some numbers Friday. Let me share it with you. Molina Park is 518 actual students. Maximum capacity, they divide this into two. Portable plus permanent. Both of them are maximum capacity of 756. We go to Brad Elementary, which was not mentioned. Brad Elementary is a elementary school. Its capacity is 511. Its capacity, portables and permanent, is 608. Ernest Ward is the middle school, one middle school. Their attendance as of Friday, last week, 491. Their max capacity is 640. Northview, and I'm going to talk about Northview a little further. Northview is where Mr. Exner and I, who are retired teachers, mentor students from Take Stock in Children. Northview is 516 present, max capacity 532. And this came from the Escambia County School Board and School District Facilities as of last Friday. So I did my research. A couple things I want to address. This area is zoned agricultural for a reason. In and around the existing proposed program, school, whatever you want to call it, is lots of farming, as Mr. Exner showed you. Not only is it, we have a wonderful heritage. How many of you know that Bernal Park, it has the oldest 4-H existing club in the state of Florida? We put out a calendar, 2014, at its 100th birthday. I want to submit this as evidence for heritage. Okay? Next thing I want to say is I realize that progress is termed differently for different people. For a homeowner, it's quality of life. For a farmer, it's making ends meet as far as yield per acre, price of cattle, and so on. For a builder, it's profit and loss. Ms. Bush was quoted as saying in Pensacola News Journal on 29th of January, there is adequate infrastructure to accommodate up to 94 lots, although an official study has not been submitted. I want to know why. My next concern is with the, I lost my place of thought, I'm sorry. Just a parting comment. MyEscambia.com asked all of our people, the citizens, to get activated and interested in government. Be careful for what you ask.
We welcome public input. It's helps us make our decisions, so you won't hear anyone on this board saying we don't want to hear from the public. We are the public ourselves as well. Jennifer Stefani. Good morning, miss. If you'll say your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Stefani. I live at 9350 Gibson Road. My biggest concern is the bridge. There are currently 5 90-degree turns on that road. We had a wreck at 97 and Gibson one Sunday morning. I could not get out. So if you put that many more houses, if you let that land go, and I have to go across that bridge, the bridge is not even fixed, you're putting my life, my kids, everyone. We can't even get out that way. My biggest concern is the bridge, the 5 90-degree turns on that road when you're going to add maybe 80 houses, 2 cars per house. How many cars are going to be on that road every day? It's dangerous. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Charles Hassenbrock. I'm sorry, it was Carlos Hassenbrock. Sorry, sir. State your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Carlos Hasbrock. I live at 8801 Gibson Road. The Hasbrocks have lived on Gibson Road since 1913, and we've seen some changes, which for the most part they've been okay. But my issue is the infrastructure on Gibson Road. If you look at one end of Gibson Road, it's as wide as Crabtree. But on the other end, as it meets Highway 97, you can't even hardly pass the school bus on that road. It's so narrow. And back when you started this zoning thing, I got 50 acres. All my neighbors have like 5 acres. And I went to the zoning board and I got turned down. I'm 1 house per 20. And I don't understand what this disparity. And the bridge has been down for over a year. If the county cannot maintain the bridge or the road structure, how are you going to put in the subdivision? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Jacob Gilmore.
Hello, my name is Jacob Gilmore. I'm at 8284 Gibson Road, Molino. My property is adjacent to this rezoning. And I'm not against the rezoning of different pieces. I was for the 4-H property selling in Beulah. I was for the property on 97 to be rezoned, but this property with Alligator Creek is a major concern. I've been on this property for 30 years, and I have seen what this creek has done during hurricanes, Sally and Ivan. The bridge will be flooded completely, so if there's a new bridge, it needs to be a lot higher. The road on Gibson, the third 90-degree curve, if you look at it, it stays underwater from 97. So, but my main thing is I'm on the farm, and we have over 400 acres. I have pigs, cows, horses, and chickens. If the smell blows over, I don't want to hear neighbors' complaints. We have Gizmo Angus Farm, and we have started a beef business, and I'm looking at expanding that beef business and possibly putting in a finishing barn. And with that, there's going to be smell, and I'm majorly concerned with the neighbors and what it's going to add to it. But mainly, the creek is my main concern in that area. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Nicholas Kravatas. Hopefully I didn't say it too bad. We'll hear from you.
Hi, my name is Nicholas Kravatas. I live at 4069 Sunshine Ridge Court. I grew up over in Santa Rosa County. Went down south to South Florida to go to college, moved back. Was going to go to Santa Rosa County, but I said I didn't want to live there. If you have driven over there lately, it's a nightmare. There's traffic galore. And I made a decision to move out to Molino because it was quiet. And if I would have known that that 20 acres was no longer in place, I probably wouldn't have moved there. I would have went further out. But I'm against this. I don't understand the clustering situation either. In terms of how is that 4 acres going to stay in place when you have water and other constraints there? Is that going to take into account those 4 acres as well? If
Yes,
they
sir.
build on
Yes,
two
sir.
of
Let me clarify that again. Regardless of how many wetlands out there, the lots, if it is approved for any development, you got to have a minimum lot size of 4 acres. That is the standard. If there are wetlands and other conservation elements that you can't mess with, guess what? That may reduce the density, but it's not going to change the lot size. Instead of them having, for example, if someone said it had a gross of 10, and if all of those other things come into place, they could have a lot size of 5 acres, guess what? They won't be able to get that number of lots because the lot size must be 4 acres. And those other constraints is going to put a constraint on the density because those things got to be considered as well. But the lot size got to be 4 acres.
Right. One other concern, if we're going to, hypothetically, 94 units, what percentage is that going to increase the population by in such a small area? I mean, you're looking at maybe doubling the population of a small area that's not used to that. So those are numbers that I would like to know how many people are living in that area, and then how many are coming in, what's the percentage increase going to be? But that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Angelo Paravalos.
My name is Angelo Paravalos. I live at 4227 Molino Road. Mr. Chairman, gentlemen of the board, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for this opportunity to speak. I moved down here less than a year ago from New York City. I know what congestion looks like. I mean, going 14 miles would take me an hour and 10 minutes. Now, we're looking at infrastructure, we're looking at public schools. I went to a high school that had over 3,000 students. And I know it was well over capacity. You're talking about classrooms with 30, 40 kids in it and one teacher. It affects the quality of learning. The other issue I have is we're talking about infrastructure. Well, the roads are eventually going to need to be expanded when you start bringing in larger groups of people. What happens to our taxes? I left New York City because the cost of living became outrageous. The property taxes here, I mean, what I'm paying for my mortgage, my rent, my insurance, insurance and my property tax is far less than what I'm paying to rent in New York. So how does that impact people that are on a fixed income, that are just barely making it at the moment? So we start increasing their taxes because new buildings coming in, property values go up, taxes go up. We're paying for these roads because I don't believe, and no disrespect, I don't believe Mr. Henry here is going to pay to have the roads rebuilt. I don't believe he's going to pay for the bridges to be rebuilt. Now, you have an increase in population. Eventually, the schools are going to have to be rebuilt. I don't believe I'm mistaken on that because you have to accommodate the amount of children coming in. So again, it increases what we pay out of pocket. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Deb Troshi? Troshi? Okay.
Hi, thank you. Trokey.
Trokey, okay. Thank you.
You know, when a person purchases, 1,700 acres for a tree farm, they must realize that many species of nature live there and actually support the system of those trees in our agriculture. For one, the gopher tortoise, both federally and state-wise, considered to be threatened, as well as the pine snake is now threatened. I'm sure there are others, but I'm not here to talk about ecological speech, just that you're aware that threatened animals depend on those woods for survival. I just know there are bald eagles, foxes, peregrine falcons, snowy egrets, reddish egrets, northern harriers, plenty of owls, as well as the owls that burrow. My favorite is the swallow tail kites. Have you seen them? Go flying by, they're gorgeous. When you tear out old growth pine, you are tearing out hundreds of species of living, breathing gifts from God that are already threatened for space. God did put us in charge of all living things. And Ms. Bush made a very, very good comprehensive argument that you have to follow state and federal mandates that say you have to allow development. Well, I'm saying there is a mandate that is above state and federal, and that's God. We are here to protect everything, and these animals do not have a voice. We're the only voice. You're the only voice. And I'm asking you to think about the ramifications to the whole environment, not just whether or not people can live where they want to live, or people can produce what they want to produce or sell the land they bought. Think about the animals that are living there, and they need to be protected. And already, I went there last night. They have the whole place bulldozed already. They have fires going, and I know that the gophers are going underground, and they're going to suffocate. And who cares? Because we need more land? There is only so much land, and those animals have nowhere else to go. So I'm asking you to consider what the higher law is, and that we do have a responsibility to protect those animals, as well as people. But the people aren't there right now. Those animals are. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Jacqueline Rogers? Good morning, Ms. Rogers. You've been here plenty of times, so you know the drill.
Good morning, and my name is Jacqueline Rogers. I live on Ridgeway. I do live in the sector plan where your staff has testified in a Division of Administrative Hearings that that's where the growth is supposed to go. So yes, we do need more housing, but it should go where the comprehensive plan directed it to. Yes, you did get this passed, but a lot of people in this room saw the March 2021 meeting where Isabel Albert said this would be along major roads, federal roads, highways, or major county roads. Gibson Road and Crabtree Road, if you've never driven down there, are not major roads. You have to go one way, as it's already been testified. The infrastructure is not there. The staff would like you to believe that you do not have to do data and analysis for a comp plan amendment until the development review stage. That is a contrary to state statutes, and when we went to a Division of Administrative Hearing, they had to hire an outside expert who did all the things that the staff did not do. There is no analysis on the environment. Having a stream and having wildlife is not insignificant. There's no data and analysis, the effect of changing this. The staff said this is not spot zoning. If you've looked at the map, this meets your definition of spot zoning. It's, excuse me, I'm going to hit the thing. Agricultural residential surrounded by agriculture. It is definitely spot zoning. Like even Ms. Bush said it was spot zoning. Spot zoning does not necessarily.
Ms. Rogers, for correction, not for the sake of corrections.
Okay, spot flu. It's a spot flu application.
But there's no such a thing as a spot flu.
Okay.
Spot zoning, yes.
Okay,
There's
but in your March 2021 meeting, you guys said they would be expansions of existing rural community areas. They would be located next to those ag areas next to rural community and along major roads. So that's what I wanted to say.
Okay.
The cluster provision is right here in your own ordinance, section 3-2.3, the description of rural residential district, which I know is a zoning district, but it allows it right there. It says clustering of smaller residential lots may occur where needed to protect prime farmland from non-agricultural use. You can even cluster on the current agricultural zoning no smaller than 1 acre to protect prime farmland. So to say that there's not going to be clustering is not true. Your TTO staff said that this is a 2-lane road with no paved shoulders, and the county does not have any proposed improvement projects scheduled for Gibson Road. So now they can pull out at the last minute, oh, we have a 30% design. That's not funding. It's not on your capital improvement plan. It's not on your 5-year plan. So that doesn't count for adequate infrastructure. The school, what they will tell you when you go to a division administrative hearing to go against this, the school will say capacity is anywhere in the county. So you're going to tell these people when Northview's full and now that Tate's full that they're going to have to send their kids to Pensacola High School or they're going to have to send them to Pine Forest High School. Now is the time for you to demand the data and analysis, and that infrastructure has to be there. As you know, there's plenty of other things that I could have said, but this should be denied. It is not where you said agriculture residential when you passed it would be. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rogers. Ollie Crabtree.
My name is Ollie Crabtree. I live at 7483 Gibson Road, Molino, Florida. And my question is, the buffer zone, the red that was on the map that was going into my property, is that just for, is there any kind of, I don't know, restrictions or any kind of, is it just for you guys to send mail out to notify us of changes that's going on within this project?
You talking about the red lines on this?
Yes, sir.
Okay, John, want to address that?
Everything within the side, the black lines is where the mailouts went. The red lines just is a 500-foot buffer, which we show for the rezoning cases. It gives it just to help everyone have a perspective of what 500 feet is from the properties.
No other stipulations or anything like that?
No, sir.
And then about the church, is that not considered a historical entity?
The church is not on these properties.
Okay. And I would just like to, say, my dad's buried there, and our family's buried there. It's been there a long time, and I would like to just make sure that, nothing damaging happens to that property at all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Richard Hissert? Morning, sir.
Good morning. Richard Hissert, 9280 Gibson Road. Just so I'm clear, what you're voting on today is the change of zoning from AG to AR, correct?
Right now, we're in the FLU, the future land use, which goes from agricultural to agricultural residential, which is the change in the amount of units that can be allowed on that property.
Understood.
That is the one that goes through the Board of County Commissioners and also through the Department of Economic Opportunity in Tallahassee.
Understood.
So that's what we're on right now. We will get to the rezoning in the quasi-judicial.
Understood. Thank you, sir. So in order to do that, does that require you or require the board to evaluate that change relative to the comprehensive plan?
That's what these criteria are that are on the staff's analysis. When they say CP policy, that's comprehensive plan policy, and they've addressed each one of those. That's why I was asking everyone to stay specific on these, because those are the standards that we look at.
Understood. Thank you. So it's my understanding the applicant must provide substantial evidence to support the application to orderly development pattern. Has that been demonstrated?
According to the staff's findings, it has.
So an orderly development pattern only addresses these technical criteria, but there's nothing other than those.
These are the categories that we are allowed to vote on.
Okay.
It doesn't mean that some of these issues that have come up are not important. It means that in this purview, we are allowed to vote on these items specifically.
I understood. But I guess what I'm saying is these are technical issues. I don't know that there's anything in these technical issues that discuss or address what's orderly. Orderly to me shows a progress from point A to point Z. I haven't seen anything in this presentation either by the board or by the applicant to suggest that anything is orderly. Meeting a technical requirement may be true. You can check the box for stormwater, check it for traffic, but there's nothing in here that talks about an orderly development, unless I'm missing something.
But we haven't been given a development to consider, and this board does not consider specific developments. That goes through the Development Review Committee. So I can't answer your question because it's not something that is in our purview to consider the development itself.
I'm not talking about the development. I'm talking about the change in zoning would contribute to orderly development pattern. That's in the own comprehensive plan. That's your words, not mine.
Okay.
I just don't see that being demonstrated.
Chair, maybe I can maybe elaborate a litder bit on it. So the order development pattern is part of the rezoning criteria, but just for sake of argument and for this, We kind of look at it, we look at it as more of like a transitional zoning. What's transitional zoning mean? What's next in line? You have agricultural, we have a rural residential, we have rural community. Those are the three that were listed in these findings. One is 1 per 20 acres, one is 1 per 4 acres. The next one is 2 dwellings per acre. So in order to develop a pattern, we're not saying we're taking an agricultural land and making it mixed use suburban or mixed use urban, which allows for 25 dwellings per acre. That would be non-compatible. What makes it compatible is this is the next one in line for a transition. If we were going to mixed use suburban, mixed use urban, that would create urban sprawl. This is still keeping up with what is allowed by use and by density in the surrounding area, which fits the 5 acres, 4 acres, 10-acre lots that are in the surrounding area. So this is a ordered development pattern, yes.
So does the proposed zoning then, is it consistent with all applicable goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan?
The findings say yes.
So again, the findings are technical, in terms of technical criteria. In your own comprehensive plan, it says it's to provide orderly growth. It also says, and I'll quote here, that the implementation of the ordinance is designed to maintain and improve the quality of life for all citizens of the county. Has there been any demonstration that this project would improve the quality of life for all citizens in the county?
The findings say yes, that this gives it more outlet. Yes.
You're saying that this project will improve my life living on Gibson Road. You'll say that anyone else in this room who lives on Gibson Road, the quality of their life will improve as a result of this project.
It's all life for the better welfare of Escambia County.
What it says is the quality of life for all citizens of the county. Those are the comprehensive land use plan narrative. That is your words, not mine.
There's a yes and a no for every, depending on your opinion.
I'm just at so it's the opinion of the board that you're voting on here.
The staff has presented written findings. That is their position. So we go by what the written findings are. It's not an opinion. It's a written finding based on the fact that they are experts in the area of land use and planning. That's what we rely on. We don't just rely on opinion. We can't rely on opinion. We have to rely on facts.
I understand that, and I appreciate your time. What I'm saying again is these are technical criteria. I don't know that any of these technical criteria address the question of whether it's improving the quality of life for all citizens of the county. What you're saying is that you can check the box for stormwater, traffic, whatever. But I don't know that anybody has said that it's going to improve the quality for the citizens of Gibson Road or Brandon Park.
This is what I can say. This is what I can say. And you have some, that is a very broad, objective standard. Now, and objectivity is in the minds of the beholder. Now, there may be, you asked for the question. There may be, you may say, well, it may not improve the quality of life. But if a subdivision come, and if there is some right-of-way improvements, which there has to be, right-of-way improvement, roadway improvements, Gibson Road has to be done. I'm making an assumption. If people, that's what he's doing. If people do come to a development where taxes are being paid, taxes help provide improvement, life improvement for amenities, infrastructure costs. So based upon that, if we make a general statement that if there is stormwater improvement around the whole area, because stormwater affects everybody, and if this area is maintaining its own stormwater, if the bridge get improved like they are slated to, I could say from a very objective standard that I do believe that that will enhance and increase the quality of life of those citizens in that area, because there will be roadway improvement, stormwater improvement. Now somebody may say, no, but that's from the 30,000-foot step level. Now that's to answer your question. If you want to be broad-minded in that rationale approach, looking at it from a very holistic approach, not narrowing our focus to just that. But anytime when someone can get increase and higher and better improvements on with infrastructure designs, I believe that is a quality of life improvement.
Respectfully, I would disagree with that because what you've already told us is that project was already on the book. So whether or not this thing goes forward or not, that bridge is going to be approved or reconstructed in 2023. So that has nothing to do with what we're talking about here. I don't know that anyone in the crowd necessarily wants to see Gibson Road improved at all, because I think we all like it the way it is, because it's a rural road. It has the character of the agricultural community. That's why we're there. No one wants a widened right-of-way out there, and I don't think, for the most part.
Just so you don't think.
Well, we could poll the group. I'm sure they'd be happy to answer the question. Relative to future land use and development, it states in your own regulations that the future land use element will also provide clear separation between urban, suburban, rural areas and provide, quote, protection for existing agricultural areas. Do we believe that this project would protect existing agricultural areas?
In the findings, agricultural residential has the exact same uses as agricultural, so yes.
Yes, absolutely good point.
Under Florida Land Use Rural Strategies, it says Escambia County will promote rural strategies including protection, agricultural, silvicultural, and related activities, protecting and preserving natural resources. Now, while you say it has the same uses, certainly there'll be a tremendous amount of use on a per acre basis once you start putting not just the houses, but the septic and the roads and the sidewalks and any other infrastructure. So while the use may be the same, the density of that use is going to decrease substantially. A couple more questions for you relative to wetlands. Can you get a permit to impact wetlands?
From now, I am not an environmental expert, but with my tenure, I believe that there are permits that where people can get to impact wetlands. But I do know this for a fact: if the jurisdictional wetlands, meeting those standards from DEP and Army Corps is extremely stringent, and sometimes it's so stringent to make it cost prohibitive. With my understanding, and many times people, that's why they'll say, I don't want to impact the wetlands, let's put a buffer, let's leave them alone because it's too costly to go through the rigmarole to get Army Corps or DEP impact wetlands.
For any impact, there is a mitigation process.
I understand. I do wetland permitting myself, so I know that in fact you can get permits to impact wetlands. And there are buffer zones, but you can. So the fact that there are wetlands on the property does not prohibit them from impacting them, correct? That's my understanding. Relative to
Mr. Hurst, your time has expired. I'd ask you to wrap up your comments.
I have only one more. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the purpose of the section, this is section 7 of the rezoning, the Florida Land Use Code. It says that the applicant has the burden of providing substantial, competent evidence the proposed rezoning is consistent with the comprehensive plan. Further, the goals, objectives, of the policies of the comprehensive plan and is not in conflict with any portion of the county's land development code. It also states that, so as a result of that, for the purpose of that section, under legitimate public purposes, that those things that can be considered shall include, but are not limited to, preventing the following, or as may be determined by law from time to time. It should prevent that the rezoning is premature or otherwise creates or contributes to an urban sprawl pattern of development. We would argue that is
Sir,
the case.
let me just stop you for a minute because we are on a limited time frame in this room. It's used by others as well.
One more.
And I want to make sure that you understand. The applicant has the burden of presenting substantial competent evidence.
Yeah.
The staff has the burden of putting together their findings of facts that are based on facts. The board then makes a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners.
Right.
The Board of County Commissioners is free to overturn our recommendation or vote with us. At that point, if you don't agree with our decision, the Board of County Commissioners, you do have the right to go through an appeal to an appropriate court. If you don't agree with the findings, you don't agree with the decision, that's the appropriate way. I understand you're trying to convince us not to vote for it, but I'm just saying there are avenues that if you see specific things that you want to address that are points of law that are very specific to the way the wording is, That's not going to change at this hearing. That's something that would have to be changed in the comprehensive plan, in the land development code, whatever it may have to be. So they're not going to be changed today just because you have good reason for it, okay? So we're kind of getting off into the ditch again with comments. We really have to stick to this. If you have fault with the staff's findings or the attorney's presentation, that's what we need to know at this point. After we make that recommendation, you have the right to go to the commissioners. I've already told you, the commissioners have a lot of authority. They can do whatever they want. They can override our decision. They've done it before. If they do, and somebody appeals it, the county attorneys have to defend why they did that, okay? So it's a very specific set of rules that we follow. And I know it's hard because people are passionate about, you know, the surrounding land uses and things like that, but there's very specific rules how we have to go through this. And if not, it'll just get overturned when it goes to the court. So I'm going to give you just another 10, 15 seconds to finalize your comments. So.
Great. Thank you. Just the last thing is the relative to that same section. It says that the proposed rezoning and development permitted thereunder will detract from the character and quality of life in general area or neighborhood by creating excessive traffic noise, lights, vibration, fumes, odors, dust, physical activities, or other detrimental effects to the nuisances. So the comprehensive plan specifically states that those things shall not occur as a result of any change in zoning. So that's all I have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Would it be helpful to anybody out there to know that if you want to officially get on the record and express your displeasure, but you agree with the previous speakers and what they've said, you can always do the ditto routine, so that we can get to the next step, back to the quasi-judicial hearing.
Mr. Salmon makes a good point. I'm sorry, Horace. In this hearing, if somebody said something that you want to just reiterate, it's easy to do that. When we go into quasi-judicial, that's where it's a little bit more direct because everything is recorded verbatim by the court reporter and those records are transmitted as evidence to the Board of County Commissioners. But in this case, you can do it. So if you agree with others, just feel free to say that. Horace?
And also, too, Mr. Very briefly, if you do agree, you can say that here, but you also can have additional comments when it comes to the future land use map amendment at the Board of County Commissioners. You can come with new comments or fresh comments on this particular item with the future land use. So you can say, yes, I agree, or a little bit, and I just say mine to the Board of County Commissioners because that's not quasi-judicial. That's more legislative. So you can't feel free to speak at that hearing. But quasi-judicial is governed by the rules that Mr. Brisky stated. So just trying to...
And we will let you know when we're going back into quasi-judicial because you'll have to be sworn in when you come up to speak and you'll know that we are in the formal part of the hearing.
Right.
Mr. Chris Kerb?
Evidence to submit.
Okay, if you'll submit it to the attorney. Is this for the quasi-judicial hearing or for this planning board hearing?
The flu, quasi-judicial, whatever you want to call it. Planning and zoning is not my lane. I'm Chris Kerb. I'm with Flood Defenders. We're a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization, and we help flood-affected advocate for better flood protection. I'm going to talk to you about your stormwater level of service 3.1.7, since that is my expertise. You guys are planning and zoning board. You're bound by the comp plan. Staff's bound by the land development code.
You're bound by both.
Well, you're bound by both. Okay. Thanks for the correction. As Horace said, that's your ruling document, right? What if your ruling document's not right? Escambia County has a bridge and drainage infrastructure problem, and they need to invest much better. Escambia County has a protect problem. They're not protecting the residents from flooding. Let me tell you why. They're using 1960s rainfall data. I'll repeat that, 1960s rainfall data. I believe all y'all agree storms are getting worse. There is actual data out there that's available that's more current data. I'll read something that's going to be going into legislative session in the future. You'll probably hear this statement. The civil engineering industry, for the most part, is not using climate-adjusted data in design of hundreds of billions of annual stormwater and transportation infrastructure investments. I'll go further into that. Escambia County's got a plan, but they don't spend a lot of money on it, and you can't secure grants if you don't have a good plan. The protect aspect of your ruling documents is what I passed out to you. In 2015, Escambia County changed from a 25-year to a 100-year design. NOAA Atlas 14 says a 100-year storm is 2.5 inches greater than what's being used. That's a lot of water. Y'all deal with land development code changes, so that's something you need to consider. 16.2 inches is what NOAA says a 100-year, 24-hour storm is, not 13.44 inches, which is what everybody's using. But you're not alone. The whole state of Florida's doing this. It's going to get changed, though. Y'all might as well get on board and change it sooner. Gibson Road Bridge and Highway 99 bridges, they're hydraulically and structurally deficient. I asked the Escambia County Engineering Department to have somebody here to speak on their plan for bridge infrastructure in this county. It's not being funded. Neither is drainage. You throw a little pocket change out here to keep people shut up. I spent 25 years working in this county begging for money.
I'm going to have to again just say that's not in our purview. That'd be
I
a
know
great
it
thing
ain't,
to explain to the commissioners. They have control
That's
of
why
the
I want
purse
to get on the record
strings.
so I can explain it to the commissioners, and I'll go to most of their meetings and explain it to them, Santa Rosa County, and
Yes,
the
sir.
city
As
of
far as
Pensacola.
our
Thank you, sir.
requirements today, you'll see stormwater management levels of service will be monitored through the provisions in the Land Development Code standards. If you wish to have those standards changed, that's outside of the purview right now, and that's something else. No, sir, we're going to move on to our next speaker, Christian Wagley.
Good morning, Christian Wagley, 801 East LaRue Street here in Pensacola, representing Healthy Gulf. We're a nonprofit group that works on waterway issues all along the Gulf Coast and the communities that live adjacent to those waterways. We are opposed to this proposed future land use amendment. Speaking to policies in the comp plan on stormwater management, I do want to note that the areas proposed for the amendment they're both a mix of agriculture and silviculture, but they're predominantly silviculture. These are predominantly forested areas, and the important thing to understand is that all land sends some amount of pollutants to nearby waterways, but forests pollute less than any other land use we have, okay? So if you care about water, if you want to go swimming, if you want to go fishing, the more land in forest, the cleaner our waters. The more we lose forest, the dirtier our creeks, our waterways. It's going to be really impossible to protect those long term. Now, the county has policies on stormwater management, but it's been widely recognized in the industry now that site level practices alone, putting in a stormwater pond, are not adequate to protect water quality. You have to look at larger land areas. You have to preserve the green spaces we need and have that more compact development that certainly the county's code speaks to. The other thing is buffers. The county's buffers around waterways are totally inadequate. It's 30 feet. The science says it should be 150 or 200 feet or greater. County has policies on habitat protection in the comp plan. What we know is that if development goes forward, as would be allowed under this amendment, you're going to divide that land into smaller and smaller pieces. It makes it nearly impossible to manage it. The bigger the land area, the easier it is to manage, especially for something that's vital to the health of these forests, and that's prescribed fire. It's vital to the ecological health of these forests. They actually die off in the absence of fire, and it's vital to the safety and health of the communities nearby to protect them from catastrophic wildfire. The proposed future land use change would absolutely promote sprawl, even though you have, FLU policy 1.3 that absolutely talks about discouraging urban sprawl. This is low density development that's separated from other developed areas. What's being proposed is not immediately adjacent to other developed areas, so they could be seen as being sprawl. FLU 3.1.5 talks about, and maybe this was covered before and I missed it, I came in a little bit late, about this needing to be located on a major road. I don't know how that was addressed by staff, and again, maybe I missed that, but I don't see where this is located adjacent to a major road as required. The comp plan also speaks about the need for new development, in addition to talking about the absence of sprawl. Ms. Rogers talked about the Midwest Sector Plan, which is the area just south of this, from I-10 to Barron Park Road. The studies that went into that, creation of that, talk about a build out of 56,000 people. And so that's a lot of development that still has to happen, that really questions the need for anything to move up into this area and into such a rural community. So we would ask you to reject this today. I think when you get down to the level of the actual rezonings and the development, when the more detailed analysis takes place, that's when the property rights concerns kick in. I think that the time to nip this in the bud is now at the future land use level. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Thomas Henry? Morning, sir. State your name and address for the record, please.
I am Thomas Henry, 3158 Gateway Lane. I came into this situation as, I am going to have timber interest in it. This was originally a 3,000 acre piece of property that was in a family for 80 years. That doesn't happen very often around here, but it had been for a long time in that situation, which is why it has been not had anything done to it in all these years, and which is why things have happened around it, because it couldn't happen in here. It's been timber property. It's been cut, planted, recut, clear cut for 100 years, back and forth many times, and that's what we're continuing to do too on a portion of it. The portion of it that is on the roadway is the only thing I'm asking for this on, because I'm just wanting to sell some parcels for less than 20 acres. It's hard to sell 20 acres. But I know it's, and I understand, I completely understand everybody's concern, I really do. I'm not here to change anybody's lifestyle or do anything, derogatory. I'm kind of surprised. 100 lot subdivision has never been something I've wanted to do. 50 lot subdivision is not something I'm looking to do. I just want to be able to sell some parcels, some acreage parcels off of a existing county roadway, which is all I've asked for, in something less than 20 acres. If I could sell them all in 20 acres, that'd be great, or 40 acres, or but I think there's a mix of somewhere between 5, 10, whatever that mix is. I'm sure everybody's going to be surprised at the end of the day. They're going to probably look back and go, I wonder what happened to that property. There's all this fuss about, because I just don't see the impact that they're talking about doing. And that was, I don't really have any interest in doing that. I just want to sell some parcels to help get some cash flow going on the property. I did get 1,700, they're right, that's about the amount approximately that I got in this deal. And the majority of it, we're going to continue to cut and farm timber on. So this, I think there's a lot of things said. And like I said, I understand completely. I understand where everybody's coming from, the concern, but there's a whole lot of concerns about nothing. I wouldn't say nothing, but I'm not looking to go, which is why I haven't turned in plans for subdivision. I'm not looking to do that. I just want to sell some parcels. That's my intention, the best I can to, help facilitate me buying the property, basically. And anybody that knows me, they know I hold on to property way too long. I probably shouldn't, because property costs you money. But just, and a couple things I just want to kind of say. I looked at that this weekend when I seen an article in the paper, and I was kind of surprised and about everything going on. Just I looked around at the parcels and where this was, and the 3,000 acres that the property was, when I look at the part I'm trying to get asked for this, you know, rezoning and, you know, future land use amendment on, I mean, approximately 1,500 feet on, all around. I mean, you could probably hit a golf ball to most of these properties I'm fixing to talk about, but there's more than, well, there's about 50 properties that are less than 20 acres within that, you know, from the border of this property. And that's just, I mean, that's not very far. 17 of them are under 2 acres. 20 of them were between 2 acres and 7 acres. And so there's a whole lot of parcels of property. And if you go a mile around this property, there's going to be, you know, hundreds, you know, at least 100 more. I mean, it depends, but there's going to be 50 plus that are probably 2 acres, in that 2 acre range or less. So it's not that, and I understand, like I said, I understand the concern, but it's just a piece of property that had been in a family for a long time, and that's why nothing happened to it. And when that happens, it's hard to cross these bridges because everything has happened around it. To the north, you got a subdivision full of 4 and 5 acre lots. To the west, you got a community of smaller parcels. To the east is a lot of smaller parcels, but it all went around this piece of property that can never be sold because the family held it for a long time. And so I understand people's concerns. I'm not trying to change their life. I'm not trying to develop a 100-lot subdivision. They're not going to see 100 lots from me. I mean, 50 lots from me is probably not going to happen. I just want to sell enough parcels, really to people off the, you know, existing county road to make this thing work for me. And that's really all I was asking for. And maybe it got thrown a little bit out of proportion, but I didn't really expect it. But yeah, that's just my comment.
Thank you, sir. All right, I do have some more speaker request forms here. Folks indicated they wanted to speak on the rezoning. They haven't indicated speaking on the flu. Is there anyone that hasn't spoken yet that intended to want to speak on the flu? I have the papers for speaking on the quasi-judicial, and all the folks that listed both on their sheet will get an opportunity to speak in that as well. But is there anyone else who wants to speak on the flu? Okay. Yes, ma'am. Come forward, please, and just tell me your name.
Nikki Kelly, 40 Mystic Springs Road.
Okay. Go ahead with your comments, and I'll note on here that you've spoken here as well.
Thank you. I'm a board-certified nurse practitioner with 13 years of experience. I'm also a native of Barron Park, Florida, Crabtree Church Road to be exact. But more importantly, I'm here today as the daughter of my mother who died in her home, Crabtree Church Road in Barron Park, waiting for emergency medical care. So my focus of the rezoning revolves around access to medical and emergency care. In our rural area, it proves to be challenging to receive brisk medical care as it stands now, let alone numbers by the hundreds. So I just wanted to share a couple of statistics. Emergency Management Communications Division provides a link between the citizens of our community with EMS, Escambia County Fire and Rescue, Escambia County Sheriff's Department. There are approximately 200,000 calls received annually, which is an average of 191. Escambia County Sheriff's Office does have a precinct in Molino. However, most people don't realize that covers Crabtree Church Road south to Kingsfield Road. Any emergency that is north or west of Crabtree Church Road, including Gibson Road, is answered by the Century Precinct, which is approximately 25 minutes away. Each call is notated for public record and for a 2-week period ranging from January 5th to January 18th. The average of dispatched officers totaled 19 events per day with a max of 28. Public statistics show us that there are 17 slots filled in the north end with the Sheriff's Department. However, that is divided by 2 Century Molino Cantonment, and then again divided by 2 rotations, the weekday, the weekend, and then 3 additional shifts, morning, evening, night, which leaves us 2 units available. Our local fire department is volunteer-based only. There are only 2 ambulances that are routinely staged in the north end of the county, Walnut Hill and Century, and those are actually redirected to the south end frequently. So the question of response time is always a concern, but more importantly, the adequacy of the staffing that responds. And I think when you look at statistics, those numbers cannot be adequately portrayed. For example, was any responder ACLS certified? Could they administer life-saving medications? Were there enough firefighters to enter a structure? Or was the response time reset because another emergency responder was dispatched as well? Our closest hospital in Florida is West Florida, which is approximately 26 miles away, and in Alabama, Atmore Community Hospital, 22 miles away. The first responders in our area continue to express that they can't keep up with the population that we have. So our concern is who will be held accountable for adding local resources. And we believe it's a primary duty of our local government entities to ensure public safety. And the term handicap has been thrown around a couple of times today, and I think our public safety is a huge handicap. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, anyone else who signed up to speak? Okay, sir, back there, yes, sir, in the orange shirt.
You want to speak?
All right, sir, tell me your name.
Vernon Prather.
Okay.
4280 Highway 196, Molino, Florida. I'm the president of Molino Utilities. Read the letter that our staff sent, and it says, for quote, that the rezoning of the property will not affect the capacity of our system. That's not an entirely accurate statement. It will reduce our capacity. However, that statement was also made without any analysis other than on-the-job knowledge. So while it's unfortunate to be a board member and find out, certain letters have been sent and you were unaware of that, so I have directed our consulting engineer to perform that analysis, because currently we're talking about, somewhere between, 19 homes to 94 homes. And if the 1,700 goes the same way, the 4 acres down the road, you're looking at potentially 425 units. So it's been quite some time. We live up north. There's not a whole lot of development. So it's not something we pay particular attention to. Our last well we constructed 20 years ago, which was well number 4 over on Gibson Road. So things tend to move a little slower up in the north, which that's why we're there. We like it that way. So I did want to clarify that we did send that letter. It's not entirely accurate in that there was no analysis done. And I look at this as kind of the tip of the iceberg, whereas and we're kind of shooting at and I've already got your purview and all of that, between 19 and 94, and maybe at build out 425 units. Because if Mr. Henry's project is very successful, I'd want him to be successful, but it could have a real big impact on our utility. So what we're doing, we're circling back to our engineers so we can do this analysis. But I did want to make you aware of what was stated in the letter.
Okay, sir, a question for you. When a development comes in through the development review process and they come to you for capacity, then someone within the organization then does the engineering or looks at it and sees what the flow rates are and that what they're proposing will work or not?
Yes. If it's a subdivision,
right,
as what Mr. Henry's described earlier, this is more of a road frontage type thing. Other than him wanting to divide property, if I own 10 acres and I want to build a house on this on the road, it's just Molino Utilities installs a meter. But if there's an actual water system that goes in, an actual distribution system, then there's DEP permits and that type of thing. And then it does go through our consulting engineer. So what we looked at through we're bound by Water Management District of how much water we can pump out of the ground, and by DEP, Department of Environmental Protection, on the operation of those wells and storage facilities. And sometimes you can have plenty of pumping capacity, but not enough storage capacity. But all those issues have to be revisited by our engineer, because we haven't really looked at it in probably over 10 years because there was no need to. Because, we've seen we've come through the boom and bust back in 07 and 08, and so everything's been real quiet for a while.
Okay. And Horace, just correct me if I'm wrong, but we use the term subdivision, and many of us think of driving into a neighborhood and there's hundreds of houses, but a parcel can be subdivided through the county standards and still be a subdivision, not necessarily look like what we consider a traditional subdivision. Is that correct?
Well, I'm just trying to address your question specifically. You got a lot split, you can split the lot. One time, that's a free split. Once you hit that third split, basically, you create a minor subdivision. When you get 5 lots, basically, a full-blown, thought-out subdivision with all of the requirements. And you said something. And at that point, the preliminary plat review process, all of that, got to go through. If there is no capacity, guess what? The preliminary plat will not be approved. So that's what they start at. Most of the time, most developers, if they want, when it comes to subdivision, they start very, very early. They don't want to have no hiccups Because if it's there, guess what? We
So I
can't
guess
get you
my
no-
point is that if it's starting to get into a major development, more than 5 units,
Yes, sir.
then it's going to have to go through that process, and it would come to you
Absolutely.
for review at that point.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And so we're going to be a little more careful about how we word our letters in the future and require more board acknowledgement, if you will.
Yes, sir.
So, but I would be remiss in my, it's a volunteer board as well, but I'd be remiss if I didn't come up and discuss that with you.
Well, we appreciate you coming forward and letting us know. Thank you,
All
sir.
right, thank you.
Very much. All right, someone else who has not spoken yet that wishes to speak on this one? Yes, ma'am, come forward, please. And tell me your name, please.
My name is Sheila Powell. I live at 4450 Crabtree Church Road in Molina, of course. And I have 15 acres there, but we have lived there for 4 generations, my husband, and it's been passed down and we farm there. But my main concern is that I own, I'm on Crabtree east of Alligator Creek, so on the opposite end of where this supposed building's gonna be, or the rezoning. And my concern is, on Crabtree, we have a lot of speeders. And I live right on a blind curve, and I've lived there ever since it was dirt, and I signed a petition and done to help to get it paved. So when it got paved, because it was such a blind curve, I gave up property to move the road over to kind of straighten that curve out. That curve is still there. If you're flying, you can very easily hit my house if you lose control. And so that is very much my concern, being as the fact that they was talking about that if it was the more abundant houses being built, that they would have to build shoulders on the side of the road and widen out the road. And in that case, I've already gave up some of my property to have the road paved. My house sits very close to the road, so if you go putting shoulders in there, you're taking more of my property. And before, it was like my house sitting near my front door and the road's right there where they're sitting. That's too close. So I have a very big concern about that. I'm not wanting to lose my home over these people getting to finally come out here and buy a piece of paradise. I know people that have worked hard and a lot of people that want to live in Molina but can't afford it, so I understand that. But, and our land was passed down to us because my husband's father is 90 and he's been there ever since. And it did get split down between their sons and then their grandsons. But I'm trying to protect that land also for my children. But in that 4C, I don't see where my fortune to be there should benefit or take it from me to benefit others that would like to move out there. So that's, I mean, I understand, I was raised on Fairfield, so I understand city life, and I moved out there and I've been out there a long time. But my other concern is when I come home every day is the infrastructure on these bridges during storms and stuff and not being able to get out. And we flood like easily. We lose electricity like easy. Sometimes the wind's got to be blowing, sometimes it ain't got to be blowing. When we're out for a long period of time. It's not turned back on that afternoon. It's like weeks or 2 weeks. But another thing is there when you come off of Highway 29 on 97, right there next to the Tom Thumb, when you turn off there to turn onto Crabtree, and I know that y'all have said that most of the access is supposed to be on Gibson, I don't foresee people coming from Pensacola going all the way down to 97, going all the way up to Gibson and coming around to get into those houses. They're going to come down Crabtree. And there is no turning lane to come in onto Crabtree behind Tom Thumb. None whatsoever. When you turn there, you are looking, trying to find your fastest way to go across because you feel like a sitting duck in a pond with duck hunters all around you. You're looking in the rearview mirror seeing who's fixing to plow into you. So it's very, and you were saying that the roads and all this would be paid by the state, which ups everybody's taxes and all. So, but I thank y'all for letting me speak. I appreciate it.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Okay. Yes, sir. Come forward, please. Okay, sir. Your name and address, please.
It's Richard Lundquist, and it's 8121 Gibson Road. I'm Mr. Henry's
across the road neighbor. I live just first house past that bridge. No neighbors down the road have had to stop using the school bus because it won't go across it anymore. But that's not my main issue. I've lived out there 34 years. I moved out there from Perdita Key, and it is a different lifestyle. I'm a Warrington boy, but that road I've traveled probably in 35 years, 50,000 trips. And there are 5 90-degree turns. It's not maintained. The log trucks just logged and tore up every corner that has an inside radius. It's mud now. It's holes and mud. There are utilities that are buried on a right-of-way that is probably less than 8 feet. On either side, Molina Utility being one of them. The phone systems, you cannot get a phone from Frontier. There are no accessible lines any longer. Gulf Power, which is now Florida Power, ends at my house. And the power runs from the other side of Crabtree Church is an independent. So as far as structure, if you're talking about going from one house per 20, which can be segmented, as we've heard in the attorney speaking, they're talking about going ahead and changing or asking for, which it looks like the next step down as a possibility. Everybody says no, but it looks like we're already going from 20 to 4. When you go to 4 and you add 94 homes with the cars, if anybody would like to look at July 11th of 2021, the intersection of Gibson and 97, 2 people were killed right there. Same thing when you go to turn and you want to turn to the left heading from 29, you have people coming from behind that will pass you on the illegal, yes, but on the left-hand side. When you come from Atmore going the other way, it is a 135-degree turn to get onto Gibson. So it's an encumbering turn with a lot of traffic, and nobody stops or slows down from behind. It's a very, very dangerous situation. The road was paved 30 years ago, been there 35 years. 30 years ago, we have cul-de-sacs that run under there that are sagged and have been patched by the county here and there, but never done properly. The right-of-way gets cut maybe twice a year, unless we cut it. And I do own 29 acres. So I'm just saying that the house lots that you see that are subdivided were family plots where they could give, and it was grandfathered in. I got my first acre from Glenn Jernigan because he had property, and each one of us got an acre. And then I bought 28 more. But I'm just saying, this is something to really consider, putting that kind of a density. Gibson is not a good road. It's very dangerous. And to improve it, you're going to have to buy a right-of-way. Might not happen.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else who hasn't spoken yet? Yes, sir.
My name is Wes Smith. I live at 8480 Gibson Road. Recently purchased my wife's grandparents' house that used to be part of 400 acres. It's only 6.7 acres. That's because it was split with the family. I just don't think the road can handle the capacity. I think you're going to be doubling the amount of houses in the that's already currently in that area if you put in 90 houses or even 75, because there's not that many houses in that area. Like everybody else said, infrastructure is not there. I don't think that's the way that people want to live out there, is in a subdivision. I would rather not be like Nature Trail where they move in and they want to change everything in the surrounding area. I would like our area to stay pretty much the same, maybe subdivide it somewhat, but 4 acres is just going to put too many houses in that area. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else who hasn't spoken yet that wishes to? All right, last call for anyone else on LSA 2022-2. Last call for public comment on this hearing. I do have your sheets for the other hearing, so don't get worried about that. All right, we hereby close the public comment portion of LSA 2022-02. At this time, Meredith, do you have a closing comment, or you want to address any of the issues presented?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Very briefly, I would just remind the board, as you have done so well, of the purview and scope of your review this morning. Remind the board that concurrency is determined at the time of a development order or development permit. And that's by state law. And I appreciate Mr. Prather being here, and we'll contact him directly in the future rather than simply reaching out to staff. But as it applies to his comments in the potable water, that's also a determination that is made, as he stated, would be at the time of a development that comes in. So if there, I know he didn't reveal or doesn't have yet what those engineers' findings would be, but if for some reason there is an issue, that's something that would be addressed at the time of development. I do appreciate all of the public and their time and their comments this morning, but would again just remind the board that we have met the criteria. We agree with staff's findings, which also shows that we've fulfilled the requirements for a large-scale amendment, for this to go to the Board of County Commissioners and then be transmitted to the state for further review, and would ask that you recommend approval today.
Thank you.
Mr. Brisky, I would like to add this statement because I know it came up quite often, and we got to abide by the state law. Florida statute, I'm reading from the Florida statute that in effect what we got to go by for my purpose. Chapter 163, 32.02, G, it says this: provided that public facilities and services meet or exceed the standards established in the capital improved public facilities, water, all the other stuff, water, the state law, that's what we govern by. It says, and are available when needed for the development. That's what we were saying. If this proceed at the time of the subdivision process, the state law said that those things must be available. Furthermore, it says that, or that development orders and permits are conditioned on the availability of these public facilities to serve the proposed development. The proposed development. Let's be clear with that. A local government, and it says may not help in my land development code, we cannot. It says a local government may not issue a development order or permit that results in a reduction in the level of services. So if the Molino Water said that if the subdivision comes, they got to meet those standards, guess what? If they don't, there is no release for me to release a development order for preliminary plat approval until we get that standard met. I just want to say that for the rule of law, the many times people make statements, some doing it intentionally, and others may not have the full scope of the state statute that we have to go by. And these are the rules that got to govern, that we got to go by when it comes to these type of review processes. Thank you.
Thank you. Board members, open for discussion, or if someone's ready to make a motion.
I have a question. I have two questions. On the maps, we brought up the church. I'm pretty sure it's not on the subject property. I'm just curious from my own mind if we can pull that up and I can get my head around where that is in relative to the property, the subject property. The church that was brought up earlier, I don't know if anyone can help me with that.
That little square that's in between the middle one?
Yep.
That's the church.
It is on the subject property.
No, it's cut out of the subject property.
Okay, very good. All right, thank you. That's my first question. I want to get my head around that. And second, Ms. Rogers brought up a very good point, and I want to, sorry for time frame, but I want to dive into this a little bit more. When we changed the comprehensive plan, it was very relevant from our consultant, and I remember the color-coded maps stating that this typical AG change to AR would be located around major highways, roadways. How are we dialing that down to where, how are we, again, you guys were there, you remember the maps, and it was all mostly clustered around basically 29 and other larger roads. I get that 97A or 95A going up off is probably considered a larger one, but how are we breaking that down? Because we're very good in our zoning about a 500-foot radius. How are we breaking that down in our change from AG to AR in relative location to a larger roadway?
If I may, let me just read part of our comprehensive plan part here. Future land use 3.1.5, new rural communities to protect silviculture, agricultural, and agriculture-related activities and to prevent urban sprawl. Escambia County will guide the establishment of new rural communities under the agricultural, residential, AR, and rural community future land use categories along highways, federals, and major county roads as identified in Escambia County Future Land Use Map 2030 map, as may be amended or as contiguous expansions of existing agricultural, residential, AR, and rural communities future land use categories.
Do we have that where we could bring it up on the screen? I want to read it myself again.
I'll just bring that up for conversation.
It's page
Maybe
139.
Numbers regarding that topic.
139 of the packet.
So do we have a 2030 map that we could see where those roads have been identified? The question is, does Crabtree Church Road or Gibson Road fit either of those categories?
If you scroll right to the legend, it identifies Major County as a color. Can we stipulate what that is? Major County, yeah. Which blue of the 5 blues, or whatever color that is?
Sorry, this is scanned in, it's not a.
Does the website have a live page that's scalable?
Is that Gibson Road that's right next to the cursor?
It is.
Okay.
Crabtree's below it, Gibson's to the left.
Okay.
So this little knot, that's Crabtree. This would be Gibson, so they fall along those roads. That's county major roads.
Thank you.
So they are
just for clarification, on this map, any road that is actually on this map is considered a major county or state road. Is that correct?
We're not speaking to condition or the width of the road. This is just a classification in the statute.
And just remind, they do have 66 feet of right-of-way already for both roads,
I was
which
gonna
allows
ask you
for
to restate
expansion or
that.
anything.
Did you have something?
Yeah, I do. I have an issue I have is we're talking transitions. We're transitioning from rural community to agriculture, and we have rural residential in between that. Are we transitioning from agriculture to rural community or rural community to agriculture? By that I mean it's almost considered a spot flu change because it does not connect to the rural community. It's kind of out in the middle. So how do you look at the transitions? There's one of three ways, either agriculture, less dense to more dense to less dense, or a combination. I tend to look at it from the more dense, the rural community, out to agriculture. And in this case, there's a gap there. It really doesn't transition naturally. It's kind of.
Well, I think, and I tend to agree with you as far as a rural community goes, because remember, we had very extensive conversations about this, but that's why the major roadways was one of the considerations that was put in there. So were those roadways identified when Flu 3.1.5 was put in place? They were identified at that time?
Yes, sir. Look at that. Yes, sir. That map was part of the requirement for the review process for the text change and the additional land use category. I mean, a future land use category.
Okay. And was there analysis done on those roadways at that time? I believe it said in there that analysis was required for those roadways. Was that done at that time?
I do know data analysis was done, and I can remember all of the details of the data analysis, but the data analysis definitely was reviewed, and it definitely was looked at, and it definitely went to FDOT and by the county.
Okay, I'm going to speak on behalf of the board, but I think the board would feel more comfortable understanding what that analysis was at that time, because it's a big decision on something like that. Folks, what we're talking about here, just so you can understand, is when there was discussions about expanding in what we all consider rural areas, there's existing rural communities. Probably the most well-known one would be Molino itself, what we consider not necessarily downtown Molino, but you get the general idea of where most of the congregation is. And
isn't it green on the map? Just for
yeah, I believe it's the green
the
ones.
Dark green.
I didn't want to misspeak, but I think the darker green ones are what's considered existing rural communities. And during our discussions at that meeting, it was discussed how would we allow future growth. And it was proposed by some that it had to be adjacent to a rural community, and that was rejected because then you basically would only have a limited area. Yeah. But the roadway standard that we're discussing now was put in place because we didn't want these on back roads where there was not the infrastructure support and everything. So that's what I'm trying to do right now, is clarify what analysis was done at the time on particularly Gibson Road. I know that road very well, and I know Crabtree as well. Now Crabtree tends to be a little bit more open, but the analysis on that. So Horace, do we have that information?
We're pulling it up right now.
Okay.
On the data analysis for Crabtree, and again, those. Yeah, here's a clear picture.
Subject property is help us out.
This is Crabtree.
here's Gibson. The reason they're on here is because they have 66 feet of right-of-way, so they meet the county standards. Where a lot of the other roads that are up there don't have 66 feet of right-of-way.
So even some of these little dead-end spurs are considered.
That's Blackberry Lane, that's where I live, and it shows on.
Sir, please, we record everything here. I can't take comments from the gallery. Even those little spurs that go out are considered major roadways? Is that?
This is the map that was part of the adopted AR.
So this is in the county code right now that these are considered major roads. Meredith, would you like to address?
If I may, I mean, the language of the comprehensive plan references you to this adopted map. And I don't, you know, regardless of any argument regarding the little spurs that you're referring to, Crabtree Church and Gibson connects between the two highways, 99 and is it 97? And serves as, even if it's not designated what, you know, in planning we would typically look for things like major arterial, minor arterial, but here that's not what the code says. The comprehensive plan requires that it be on this map designated as a major county roadway, which these are. So, you know, that data and analysis determining which roads to mark on the map, I'm not sure. But what I do know is that the comprehensive plan directs you to this map, and this is the approved map. And that for purposes of argument, the fact that it connects between Florida Highway 97 and County Road 99, and that these are existing local roads with infrastructure sufficient for additional rural communities, should be sufficient for your purposes.
Please scroll back right to the legend. The double black line is a major county road. That's like 99. The single black line is a major city street. Are you saying this is, as I see on the map, Crabtree and Gibson? Are we saying major city street is also included?
So major city streets are, so again.
In 315.
Future land use category along highways, federal, and major county roads as identified as Escambia County Future Land Use Map of 2030 map. So the 2030 map, and also is to prevent urban sprawl, Escambia County will guide the establishment of new rural communities under agricultural AR. So will guide, doesn't say, you know.
Yeah, it does not say it's a prohibition. Let's be clear with that. It does not say it's a prohibition. It says it will guide. It will guide. And that map is identified what was used in the data, what was used, what the text and what the change was made upon. It says it will guide. Now, if there is remember I just read the statute. If there's some infrastructure needs that need to be, if a subdivision is proposed, those things will be looked at holistically and wholeheartedly. So this is just at that level. It says it will guide. It doesn't even say discourage or encourage. It says it will guide. So to guide, when you're looking at it, this may be the first one per se. And if there's some way we may need to modify that because it's going more to some of those rural roads that are not beneficial for major development, smaller scale, lower scale. So it's something that we have to take a look at. But it's pointed out clearly that it says that it will guide. And state statute says that we will even look closely at that. We got to, if there is a proposed development.
Okay. Let me ask the applicant a question. Ms. Bush, When you and your client made application, did you rely on this map as the information to support your substantial and competent evidence for this proposed change?
That, I believe, is included in the submittal, yes, because we included all of the HAF's analysis that was submitted with the ordinance. It's attached to and adopted as part of the ordinance which created this category. But along the lines of what Mr. Jones had said about it guiding, I would also state that this is in close enough proximity to 97 and 99 that it's along and in the general vicinity of those major roadways, even if not directly adjacent to or touching. But all of this information is included in our backup, and I can direct you to the exhibit.
What was that you briefly flashed up?
This was a two-part question here. You're talking about, ag, AR, and RC, showing what's compatible and not compatible with the zoning categories. So you can see what's transitional and what's not. So we would say anything that's, we'd never had AR until recently. So what's transitional is AR, not RC now. So that gives it a more, transitional there. And I can speak to one of the other questions that came up, a statement that was misspoken by one of the citizens saying that you can cluster to 1 acre in RR. Yes, you can cluster to, if you had a future land use of RC, but if you have, which allows for 2 dwelling units per acre. So the clustering provision does allow you for the rezoning of RR to cluster to 1 acre, but the future land use trumps that. So if we have a future land use of AR, it does stick to the 4 acres. So you cannot go below 4 acres with the AR. Even though the clustering allows you to go to 1, you would have to have a future land use of RC because the state's comprehensive plan trumps everything.
And let's be clear, the applicant is not requesting RC.
Correct.
So the clustering really is not going to help at all. It's not going to impact it at all. It has to be at least 4 acres.
Yes, you could get 10% reduction in setbacks and lot width, and that's it. Which on a 4 acre lot does not make a whole lot of difference.
Right.
Yeah, and that's why, Mr. Bishop, thank you, John, for reiterating it. That's why it's very, very important for people to come and get the factual information. 4 acres. Again, I'm saying that is a set standard. You cannot change that just by willy-nilly. That's hard to change. And I've been in enough hearings that I don't even want to make an attempt to change that. That's why, and this did went up to D. When this was looked at, this ordinance went up to all of the reviewing agencies. The Department of Agriculture was one of them. They looked at that. They looked at all of these elements. And so therefore they said that is a good transition, basically, to move towards that. That's why this was adopted as an opportunity for someone to make their case and make their presentation.
So getting back to 3.1.5, Gibson Road and Crabtree Church Road do not fit the categories outlined in that paragraph.
It is identified on the Escambia County Future Land Use Map. That is part of the quotes.
Absolutely.
And then this is a guide.
Absolutely.
Now the question is, are they either a highway, a federal,
they are a local
or a major county road?
They are a local road, but it says also as identified on Escambia County Future Land Use Map. They are identified on the map.
I'm going to reread. I'm a little slow. Former Marine, so it takes a couple times. It says to protect silviculture, agriculture, and agricultural agriculture-related activities and to prevent sprawl, Escambia County will guide the establishment of new rural communities under the agricultural residential AR category and rural community RC category, future land use categories along highways, federal and major county roads as identified on the Escambia County Future Land Use 2030 map. Those, or as may be amended.
So it is on the future land use map. It is on the future land use map.
It's on the map and the applicant relied upon it.
Yes. Yes.
And we would
Question is
also.
the map correct? Because
Did the applicant
Major
incorrectly
City
write?
Roads is marked as a single black line, and it does not specifically say Major City Roads. It says Major County Roads, which is a double line. I think that was the main question that everybody is curious about. Is the map actually correct, showing the correct major county roads? Because a single line is not a major county road.
Mr. Reed, that's a good question. But at this point, we can only go by what that map says. I'm not disputing you. Now, if there are some concerns, that's why planning board, you can make your recommendation or not. We're just presenting the rules of law that we have in for us.
And 3.1.5 also allows the expansion of existing AR or rural community future land use categories. Because this is the first AR, there's not, another AR category to be contiguous to or expand from, but somebody has to be the first one. So even if it's not marked or the major county road as the two double lines versus the other map, which had the one darker line, I would contend that this would fit that as the expansion of the agricultural, residential, or rural community. Within the vicinity of this property, there are those existing rural communities, both designated as future land use and the existing smaller lots on the ground, the actual smaller acreage.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Are you ready to entertain motions?
I want to give council an opportunity to make sure they have all their statements on the record before we would do that, and the staff as well. But yes, as soon as you tell me that you're convinced you have everything on the record, I can entertain.
I'm never convinced that I've said enough, but I think we've heard a lot today, and I believe this board has all the information that we have to provide, and we would just ask that you recommend approval.
Okay. Horace, on behalf of the staff, do you want to add anything to the findings or change anything?
Based upon the information with the rule of law that we have, thank you. Based upon the information that we have before us and the rules of law that are adopted as part of the Escambia County rule of law in place at this time, staff is consistent with the findings at this time, based upon the information as pertaining to the adopted Escambia County future land use plan.
Okay.
In that case, I move that we approve LSA 2022-02.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Can I ask for an amendment?
Okay. Sir, will you consider an amendment to your motion?
I'll listen to the amendment.
I would like to have it on record for approval, which I agree with, but with clarification of this major road, major county road, or major city road, and either have the FLU plan amended or the map corrected by staff.
I agree that we need to clear up the language maybe, but I don't know that I don't agree that it should be in the same motion.
Okay, so your motion stands as
My motion
presented,
stands.
approved based on the staff's findings and substantial competent evidence from the applicant.
Absolutely.
Okay, do we have a second? Second call, do we have a second?
I want a second just to get on the floor.
Okay, we have a second, further discussion. All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye, opposed?
Nay.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Can we take a show of hands?
Show hands.
Okay, all those in favor? And opposed? Okay, the motion fails to approve. Do we have an alternate motion?
I would like to make a plea, I guess, to the applicant to postpone this until we get clarification of this map and the legend and the way that the wording on the flue is specifically written, because there is conflict, in my opinion, and I think that's the conflict of the board that voted nay, is this is not clear, and with good conscience, I could not vote in favor until I get clarity.
And Reed, I appreciate your comments, and I voted in favor of it for just the opposite reason of that. I believe that the applicant relied on the information in the county documents, and in that case, they met the substantial competent evidence, and the staff's findings were consistent with that. So we're really dealing, that's why you see quite a difference in the vote up here. Chair will entertain an alternative motion to the one that was presented, as that did not pass.
I don't know if it was a motion or a suggestion to them, to ask them to, if they want to postpone for.
Is that a motion for postpone?
I guess that would be a motion to postpone then.
I'd like to ask our county attorney, board attorney, for a little legal help here, as far as procedurally wise, as far as what their rights are moving forward.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, as the original motion for approval.
Sir, if you'll state your name and then also get a little closer, they can't hear you.
Matt Schad with the County Attorney's Office.
Little closer. You're gonna have to use your outdoor voice.
Matt Schad with the County Attorney's Office. Mr. Chairman, as the initial motion to approve is already, it died, you could take a motion to postpone it. However, I would strongly recommend that Ms. Bush have some say in how she wants to proceed, and then the board could take her recommendation or request under advisement before they make that motion.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Bush?
Yes, the applicant would agree with allowing additional time to clarify what is the correct map. Mr. Kerb did come up to me and Mr. Henry and advised that the classification is based on those traffic counts and not on roadway. I don't know that this, again, is just information that I've received that I would appreciate time to look into as well. I believe you could still approve it, but seeing how the vote just went, we would, versus a vote to recommend denial, we would agree with coming back next month or at a later date to be determined and addressing the roadway map or the language of 3.1.5 and ask for clarification in the interim.
Okay, so it's your request to ask for a continuation of the case. Is that within the standard, Mr. Straub, that we could consider?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Is that your wish?
Yes.
Okay. Chair will entertain a motion to accept the applicant's wish to continue the case.
Move to accept.
Second.
Second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. So that's been granted to continue. Now back to our issue with the quasi-judicial. Do we need to go back into session there and do a similar?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, regarding the quasi-judicial, I would recommend that the board make a motion to postpone that to
And I want to be clear. I'm sorry for the interruption. Now, so I guess and the direction is we want to make sure, because I don't want us to. We're just going to address the roadway network. That's motion. The roadway for clarification on that. still, yeah, on that language, not getting into all those other stuff, right, Mr. Reed? So I want to be clear, just with the
That is
roadway.
correct. I believe the applicant made a decision based off of a map that is not quite,
Okay.
it's a little misleading a little bit.
Okay, just want to be clear with my direction.
Okay. And Mr. Chair, I'll just add that I think I see both sides. It's enough of an erroneous nature. And this being the first one, I think it's important we get it correct. And that if in quasi judicial, that it be a continuation, similar to this.
Okay. Mr. Stroud, go ahead, finish your comment.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, regarding the quasi judicial hearing, I would recommend that the board make a motion to postpone it, but postpone it to a date certain, not just postpone it indefinitely. I don't know how long it would take for the next large-scale amendment hearing to come back, but I would recommend perhaps 2 or 3 planning board meetings.
Okay. All right, so as a point of order, we've made a motion on the large-scale amendment, and that's been settled to come back. I'm going to hereby close the Escambia County Planning Board meeting and hereby call back into order the Escambia County Quasi-Judicial Planning Meeting, the rezoning hearing. We are now back in quasi-judicial. Everything is being recorded and everything is under oath. I'll remind all parties that have been sworn in that you still are under oath for the quasi-judicial hearing. And at this time, Ms. Crawford, based on the information for the flu, which a zoning change would be subject to that approval, do you have a recommendation for the board?
Yes, we would ask again that the rezoning be continued to a later date certain, to allow time for us to clarify the intent of 3.1.5 in the map.
Okay. Now, when we talk about date certain, we need to get into the notice requirements and the advertising. So can we pick a date certain now?
Staff would recommend a minimum to the April planning board. March would not be feasible for us. So minimum April, if not May planning board.
Okay. The March one, we don't meet the requirements for noticing, or is it that the staff doesn't have?
My concern is getting with legal and the map, if there's any changes that might need to be made, bringing them in at the same time, drafting a new ordinance, or getting clarification, making sure that we get everything. I mean, today's first, we really only have a week and a half before, so we have to clear this up in a week and a half before all advertisements.
Mr. Stroud, would it be appropriate for expedition of the client to ask for the March hearing and then come in and extend it again at that point, just to see if the staff can meet that standard?
I would prefer not to keep bringing it back in.
Okay.
I would prefer that all parties have sufficient time to review and amend any
Okay.
arguments that they need to make.
We can agree to April.
Okay.
That's fine.
Planning board members, based on the applicant requesting an extension to the date-specific April meeting, do we have a motion? Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, let me do that. Thank you for catching that. Since we are in quasi-judicial, and before we take any vote, I do need to qualify and find out if anyone has had any ex parte communication. Members of the board, has there been any ex parte communication between you, the applicant, applicant's agents, attorneys, witnesses, fellow planning board members, or anyone from the general public? Also ask if you have visited the subject property and disclose if you're a relative or business associate to any of the parties. Morning, Steve.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
No to all.
Thank you.
No to all, but, oh, I'm sorry.
That's
I thought
okay.
that was you.
No to all.
Thank
No, we
you,
got
Mr.
a
Adams.
guy beside me now.
He said no to all.
Yes, sir. Mr. Sammons?
Yes, no to all, although I will add that I know the area very well. I used to live out that area.
No, I'm very familiar with the area as well.
Thank you, Chairman. No to all?
No to all.
No to all.
No to all.
All right, now Chair will entertain a motion regarding the extension to the April meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right. If there is no other business for the quasi judicial rezoning, we are in adjournment. We will now go back into the regular planning board meeting. Folks, there's just agenda items that we need to go over. You're welcome to stay, but if you wish to leave, just please do so quietly. We will hold on to all of your sheets for that meeting, so you won't have to sign another one again, but we will hold on to them. Thank you for your participation. Members of the board, we're going to look at our planning board monthly follow-up report. And I see Horace has stepped out. John, do you have anything on the follow-up report?
Just as people are walking out, April 5th is the next planning board meeting.
Folks, please keep it down. We're still conducting business. April 5th.
April 5th. Same time.
April 5th, 8:30 a.m. will be for those cases only. There is a planning board meeting in March, but this topic will not be at that one. Okay, nothing on the follow-up report?
I don't have anything.
All right, 6-month outlook, any cases that you may want to bring to our attention or anything? Okay, any action discussion items?
No, I can think of it this time.
Okay.
Director Horace would be the better person to ask. I don't think we have anything.
Public forum, anyone wish to bring forward a topic for public forum? Ms. Rogers?
I'm sorry, I didn't fill out a form for public forum. I'll be happy to do that.
That's
or you
fine.
can
You're
add
on
it.
the record. That's fine.
There's just two comments that I have. One was, in the meeting in March, I did tell you that it was too vague, that it was vague, and you specified that it was going to expand out from rural community. Now, this has nothing to do with the case, but I'm talking about the ordinance itself. So I just want to ask you to just go back and watch what you guys approved and what you said and what the consultant said also. But the other thing that I wanted to say is, when people come in for rezoning hearings, you put up the 5 criteria. And I know we've been through this before, but I'm bringing it up again because I've also brought it up with Allison Rogers. I haven't received anything back to her. But after item number 4 that says approval conditions, it does say that your board has another responsibility. Even if they meet all the criteria, it says after that that you guys have to, let me read it directly, and this is all I have to say, so it'll be very short. Number 4 was all the conditions, the 5 conditions. Then it says number 5, and this is in the Land Development Code under LDC change, which would apply to the rezoning. Number 5, board action. If the reviewing board finds from the record of the hearing that the applicant has presented competent substantial evidence establishing the required conditions, the board shall then consider whether maintaining the current zoning will serve a greater public interest. So even if they meet all those criteria, you have to consider whether maintaining the current zoning will serve a greater public interest. The board shall recommend approval of the rezoning request to the BCC. So the board is obviously talking about the planning board. They will recommend approval of the rezoning request to the BCC if the board finds that no new uses, density, or intensity of use of the proposed zoning will likely diminish quality of life, reduce property values, confer a special benefit on the subject property to the detriment of the community as a whole, or create other adverse impacts upon surrounding properties, more than the uses, density, or intensity of the current zoning. Before you make your decision, that's what you have to consider. When you say people can't talk about quality of life issues, they can't talk about adverse things, you can only talk about those 5 criteria, you are suppressing valuable testimony from people. And I spoke with a land use lawyer outside of this area, and he said that would be something that you could do an appeal, a certiorari appeal, I think is the term. So I'm bringing that up with Allison Rogers, if she wants to address that with her staff, but please go back and read that section on land development amendments, because It clearly says here, and for people to be passing around that you can only speak to those 5 criteria is wrong. Your own ordinance says that. If you want to change it, that's something you have to bring up, but it says, even if they met the criteria, then you have to consider those other things too before you make the recommendation to the board.
Thank you, Ms. Rogers. We'll rely on our county board
And if I may,
attorney.
this issue, thank you, Ms. Rogers, for that. That came up before, and I think we had a discussion last year or before. I think we had a discussion on that, and I would have to research the emails that came from the legal. I would have to research the emails that we already got from our legal counsel. But I know that we had some discussions on that, so we will have to review that and look at that again. That's all, because our county attorneys are looking.
Mr. Chair, I remember the argument, and I remembered that I said we actually get it, and we use our gray matter. We have to in all these. I believe the chair is going overboard for a purpose, and the reason is we're very empathetic to the public people coming out of here, taking their time off, and then getting up there to speak in front of people is very nerve-wracking, and they all assume the same thing. Oh, it's against us. You heard them today say, oh, that attorney's done this before. She has. Nothing against her. Good for her. She knows the rules of engagement. He's going overboard to share what items we can consider, and I think it's fair to do that. I also believe it should be, well, you're comfortable with it enough to know this, that we do consider all the different options, not just the 5 criteria, although that is the basis. That's what they present it upon. That's what we judge it upon. Obviously, we hear and empathize with the other things, but over and over again, the roads, we're not at the roads point yet, and that's frustrating for the applicant because he's not asking for any development, and that's correct. And so when people get the point that they don't listen to us, I think that's what the chair is trying desperately to go overboard to explain it, not to patronize them and say you're dumb. You don't get to be here as much as we do, although we don't want to be here as much. But you become accustomed to the process, and I really believe it's his intention to share with them, please focus your arguments in these general categories so that we can consume it. Because if we have a dissenting view, typically we have to, especially if we go against counting, which we've done in the past, we have to come up and articulate on the fly why we want to argue with county, who's professionally paid to do this, and come up and say why we think they're wrong.
Right, and I understand that, but what I'm saying is you can come up and disagree with the county, even if they meet the criteria. That ordinance says you can consider those other things.
It's yet to stop any speaker here from doing it. Every one of them does, no matter how many times.
What you flash up on the screen is limited to those 4 things, and there's been email circulating. You can't talk about quality of life. You can't talk about public services.
Ms. Rogers?
For the record,
Okay.
it didn't discourage anybody. They all came up and said what they had to say.
Because I told them to talk about it anyway, because
Ms.
that's what,
Rogers.
I showed them the county,
Yes,
I
and
showed them.
I appreciate your leadership on it too. I
and
get your point.
Okay.
But it's always that way.
If I have misspoke, I will rely on the county attorneys to tell me, don't say it that way, whatever. Mr. Pyle is exactly correct. I try to explain it in layman's terms because it is very intimidating and most people don't get what quasi-judicial means, what all of these things mean, so we try to explain it. If the county attorneys think that I should explain it or do that in a different way, I will certainly be happy to amend how I explain it. But that'll be up to Allison and the legal staff to, excuse me, to explain that to me at that point.
Okay, and just to acknowledge also that the comp plan amendments don't have those 5 criteria. That's for rezoning only. For the comp plan amendments, it is the public facilities and all the other things that the staff addresses in their staff findings. So that is a little bit broader, and those things can be considered.
And we allowed them to be very broad today.
Right, right.
We did not limit them today.
And for the record?
Yes, sir.
I want to say that I like the emphasis that you put on it because I think it helps them when they have 3 minutes. And I support the 3-minute rule, but it helps them to concentrate during that 3 minutes and get the important points in.
But you do acknowledge, all the board members acknowledge that even if they meet those 5 criteria, you can't say, well, we have to pass it, they met those criteria. There is discretionary, that's what the ordinance says. Then you have to consider quality of life, detriment, adverse impacts. That's all I'm trying to make sure that you guys are acknowledging you still have that power. County Commission does it all the time, and I know everyone thinks County Commission can do whatever. They do that all the time, but I'm here to say the planning board has that discretion too, so
Ms.
you
Rogers,
have
I
to-
would concede to that statement if you will concede to the fact that we also have to make sure that we follow the rule of law and our decisions are subject to a circuit
Definitely.
court judge overturning them, so.
Either way,
we-
definitely.
Right,
I
and
definitely
so
agree.
I'll concede with what you're
Yeah.
saying, but that's the other side of it too, is
No,
that
I
we have to
understand.
do that, so.
I understand, and you guys do, you do a good job. It's really hard, I know that. But I just wanted to put that out there, not to limit that testimony.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Matt, I'm gonna allow you to speak on it briefly.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm aware of Ms. Rogers' concerns. There's a reason I have not responded to her, because my client is this board and I don't provide legal advice to the members of the public. But if and when this board should stray close to those lines, I will make you aware, but I have not had any concerns thus far. I mean, arguably, you're providing a bit too much discretion when it comes to talking about topics that really have nothing to do with the item at hand. But I would much rather you err on that side than limiting it. But from what I've seen thus far, I have no concerns about limiting public input.
Okay, and if that changes through anything that Ms. Rogers reviews, Ms. Rogers, our county attorney, then I would like to know that, please.
Could I just ask then the attorney if is he saying that I am correct, that is part of the ordinance and those are things that you can consider?
You're correct, that is part of the ordinance.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Chairman?
You talked about addressing the 5 issues.
Sir, if you'll state your name again,
Ted
we're in
Ferguson.
public forum, so you have the right to speak.
You talked about those 5 issues, but as I was sitting listening to her talk, I was writing down stuff. So if she says it to begin with, and you got a question about it, isn't this the place to bring it up?
Yes.
It's not on the 5 things listed.
Today was unique because we're dealing with 2 different types of cases, and I think the one case, the future land use for the large scale, is a much broader area. When we're in the quasi-judicial rezoning, it's a much narrower set of criteria that we have to consider. That's why you saw a difference in what was done today.
Well, my example is, council brought up that somebody with 20 acres has a hard time keeping up with that. That's not true. So that's why I brought that up. I don't have a problem whatsoever keeping up my 20 acres.
It's
For the
opinion.
record?
I mean, it's just, on both sides.
Well,
it's
what
a-
I'm saying
it's
is, if
opinion.
she says something that I don't agree with, am I allowed to bring it up during?
Yes, absolutely.
That's all I want to know.
We have not limited anyone from saying what they want.
Y'all went above and
so,
beyond, I understand
yeah.
that. But you just got a lot of passionate people.
I understand.
That really care about the community. So I just want to clear that up.
I didn't have any problems with your comments at all. The best I can remember them.
Appreciate it.
Chairman,
All right, yes, sir.
I do have a question regarding the, what do we consider transitional and what's the distance to transitional? Because that was brought up a number of times today, which was, it's transitional. And I'm looking at these parcels and they're within a mile from the rural residential. To me, that's transitional. That's my opinion, because I don't know if there's any legal fact of what is distance becomes transitional. If it's my opinion versus your opinion, 1 mile versus adjacent to it. And I just want a little bit of clarification on that.
And I will add, I brought that up, I believe, in our discussions where I asked, did a piece of a parcel have to touch the related zoning classification to be considered transitional? But I don't remember that there was clarification given.
Transitional works both ways, down or up. I mean, if you're zoned RC, then you can go to RR, or you can go to LDMU or LDR. It's more of a density. We don't have a distance requirement. That's where spot zoning would come in if you're a spot zone. Spot zoning can be considered if you're an acre or less, 5 acres or less, or, 20 acres. So if, you can, for agricultural, spot zoning might just be one zoning change in there that's 20 acres. But if you have 120 acres, and the density is 1 per 20, it's not really considered spot zoning when you're allowing this bigger grader. So that's where, I mean, there is no set rule. This is the discretion of the board to, determine that. I mean, we use our planning, hat to say, if this was 5 miles north of here, yeah, that's gonna be considered much more spot zoning. It's gonna be considered more of not transitional because you're not close to anything. But as well, you gotta have an opportunity to do one transition at least to the next zoning category.
Well, and not to get into the case either, but in this particular situation, this is the first one, so there has to be some subjectivity to it because it's the first one, so.
And that's a very, very valid point. This is the first one. This is the first one. And with first one, you have to start somewhere. And then, and I think that's what it says to guide, okay? Another comeback is just guiding. Then we get data, we get some things worked in, then staff can have a better opportunity to review those. But you always got to have someone of the first one to look at, especially when there is no set standard in place at the time. Then once you get that, then you start doing that. Because all this is based upon presumptions until you get something set in stone to work with.
All right, thank you. Horace, do you have anything for director's review?
Thank you again.
All right, county attorney report?
Nothing, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Before you close out, I did want to tell the attorney, I apologize, you didn't get that response, and it'll be a conversation.
Oh, no, it's okay.
On my side.
Okay, thank you.
Just to let you know.
All right, thank you, sir. Next regular meeting will be March 1st at 8:30 a.m. here. Is there anything else? Then we are adjourned. Thank you.
Yes. Yes, sir.